I'd like to call this Monday, May 16th Board of County Commissioners meeting to order. If you would, join me in an invocation. Lord, we thank you for bringing us all here safely tonight. Pray that you would be with us as we conduct the business of the Union County citizens. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with our school board and have good question and answer time with them tonight, and hope that those decisions will be fruitful in helping the citizens of Union County as well. Be with us as we go home tonight. Keep us all safe and keep our families safe, and bless the people who keep us protected in Union County. Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time we'll have employee recognition. This is the service awards for the retiree recognition. Employee recognition program acknowledges employees for full-time continuous service at the following intervals: 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, and 30 years of service. We would like to recognize the following employees for full-time continuous service with Union County local government. With 10 years of service: Patricia Simpson, Human Services; Kevin Lee, Public Works; Ryan Hedlund, Sheriff's Office; Kerry Redmond, Sheriff's Office; Ronnie Murray, Public Works. That's with 15 years of service. With 20 years of service, we have Sheila Simpson in Tax Administration. And the May retirements, we have Serena Chaka in the Register of Deeds, 11 years, and Enriqueta Estrada Costello in Human Services, 12.5 years. Now we have a public hearing. This is a preliminary public hearing regarding the manager's recommended budget.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. Prior to you, whoa, a little reverb there. Prior to you hearing from individuals in the public who want to speak on this issue this evening, I just want to make a few remarks, and then Mr. Yates does have a presentation that provides you an overview of the budget. The proposed budget that is being submitted for your consideration reflects my recommendations as it relates to county services, fire services, emergency medical services, and our community partners. It does not include the Board of Public Instruction, UCPS. As the board is aware, we had a joint meeting just this evening. We just finished up a few moments ago, and we have another one planned for May 24th to review and discuss their operating capital request for fiscal year 2017. A hearing on the combined budget, which is statutorily required, is scheduled for June 6th at this point in time, with final budget adoption to occur prior to June 30th. I do want to state that this particular hearing this evening is also in compliance with the public hearing for the following economic development appropriations as is required pursuant to General Statutes 158-7.1 as it relates to local incentive grants that we have provided. Jeff, for the record, do I actually need to read those grants? Okay. County staff has been working on the proposed budget since October. We held the first public work session with the board in February, in which we presented our 5-year forecast. We have also conducted 6 other budget work sessions on the topics of our water master plan, our wastewater master plan, sustainable fire funding, and an overview of the county operating and capital budget, not including Union County Public Schools. At this point in time, I'd just like to thank you for providing me with the opportunity to provide you with this brief overview on the development process of our budget, and turn it over to Jeff Yates.
Good evening, Commissioners. Excuse me, my allergies have been acting up. So what we have tonight is I'm going to go through a brief just summation. This is very similar to the discussion we had a couple of weeks ago as we first brought you the manager's recommended budget. And as Cindy mentioned, our process started in earnest with staff development sometime in October, and through the spring with public work sessions with you as the board to try to get direction on certain specific issues. And then our public process, as we refer to it, our bifurcated process, where we discussed the manager's budget and the proposed capital budget, and that occurred initially on May 2nd. There was an additional work session followed up with the solid waste business plan. And where we're at tonight is the public hearing related to the county manager's budget and the county tax rates. In this case, we're referring to the county operation rate, or the county operating rate, the countywide fire tax rate, as well as the EMS tax rate. And then later on in your agenda tonight, there is a tentative adoption of these components of the budget. And what that allows us to do, as you can see, on one side we have the blue, and on the other side we have the green. That allows us to kind of resolve the manager's budget discussion and then turn our attention to focus on the schools side of the house. So as you know, tonight we had our work session with the schools, lasted about 2 hours, and there were a lot of issues and a lot of discussion that went on, and I think that our time is well served to spend our focused energy on that versus continuing the discussion with the manager's budget. So that's kind of the thought behind the bifurcated process, and with the school's budget being so significant, I think in the past couple of years since we've been doing this, it's been very productive for us. So with that tonight, I want to review real quick the development principles and opportunities used in our budget development process. I want to review a couple of finer points in the budget, review the proposed tax rates, and kind of talk through the next steps. I know we took some of the information that you had asked us at our last work session, so we're going to approach a little bit of that information, answer some questions we've had, and try to just kind of give you and the public kind of a general summation. Just for the public, we had handouts tonight. I hope we had enough. If not, all this information will be available on our website tomorrow, as is our proposed budget and all the other information. And I have a final slide that kind of shows where all that information is available. So what guides our budget development, we have our strategic objectives, which the Commission has told us again and again what their priorities are: public safety, building community consensus, economic development, sustainability, and organizational strengthening. And we build those with our budget principles, and these are kind of our guidelines, if you will, our framework for development. I'm not going to spend a ton of time. I just want to put them in front of you, just kind of remind you that the budget the manager recommended to you meets all of these check marks. In addition to these, we try to adjust in that process mandated service requirements. And that's kind of where the budget opportunities come into play. We take those budget principles and then we filter those through kind of a, if you will, an environmental scan or a what's going on around us analysis. And we look at things like the changing public safety needs. As you look at the budget, you would see pretty significant law enforcement growth, fire protection, emergency services, growing mandates. You would see that come through to fruition looking at the human services area particularly, economic conditions, looking at compensation, looking at growth and development and the needs for growth management, for instance, in our tax office. Our service demands, where are we at personnel-wise comparatively to where we've been in the past? Are we able to deliver services efficiently and effectively? And if you remember back to the February conversation, we look at our demand for services index as a way to kind of measure how much workload stress we put on our employees, how our community partners are faring during the economic times and so forth, what their needs are. And those are folks like SPCC, the shelter, for instance, and so forth. And then our water sewer master plans and our solid waste services. So these are kind of some of the things we looked at this year and really tried to address ongoing issues and opportunities in those areas. And when you bring all that together with our budget principles and our strategic objectives, it comes to what you have in front of you as your proposed budget. We work to develop that with the notion that we want to provide the most effective and efficient services possible. And I want to point out, you had sustainability in your strategic objectives. That's kind of our starting place for everything we do. And the manager and I have long conversations about putting a budget in front of you that we believe is completely sustainable for a long period of time. So on the countywide tax rate, we believe where you're at countywide provides for that 5-year, and I've got a model that shows that. And then for fire funding, for instance, we believe that rate is sustainable for 3 years. So we really kind of undergird everything we do with that notion of sustainability and trying to provide efficient services. As you can see, our proposed expenditures, where the dollars go. And I want to point out, because Jeff Crook will always get mad at me if I don't, that the funding in this pie that goes to UCPS is really related to debt service and their operating charges, not related to current expense or capital. Those have not been determined. So this is kind of a less the schools pie. And you can see your money goes to public works, to human services. The general county administration in this case includes the tax office, large chunks of our capital program and those different pieces. So it's a conglomeration of everything that really doesn't have a nice neat home. You have growth management. Emergency service is a big chunk, and that includes your EMS, fire, your 911 call center, and so forth. So this kind of just gives you an order of magnitude of where the funding goes. And when you're looking to a budget-to-budget comparison, because one of the questions that I know, Commissioner Simpson, you always have is, how are we growing? And where are we seeing the growth? And we went back and looked at it. And we show you in the budget generally at an actuals table, and I apologize, this table got a little bit cut off. And when you compare year over year and you compare actual to actual to actual, it gives you one snapshot. But what we wanted to do in this case is look at budget to budget to budget, because that's what you make your policy decisions based on. So on a budget to budget comparison, if you took a 5-year compound annual average growth, meaning cumulative growth on average, you'd be looking at about 2.1% over that 5-year window. And if you exclude the sheriff's office, it's about 1.29%. And the reason that is, and we believe that, and I'll have a slide that kind of shows this later, is that as we looked at our strategic objectives, as you have told us, public safety is your number one priority. And we think the budget that we put in front of you and our expenditure history kind of exemplifies that when you're providing for the public safety services. The recommended tax rates, the general county tax is unchanged. The schools tax is yet to be determined. The emergency medical services tax remains the same. And the countywide fire tax goes from 0.48 to 445. And that's with elimination of the $100 or the fire fee, in most cases $100. And I'll spend a little more time on the fire fee in a few minutes. But keeping in mind then, probably following the additional work sessions you'll have with the schools, you'll be asked to then set that schools tax rate, or the manager will make a recommendation by June 1st, and then you'll be setting that separately. The tax allocation, this is a graph a chart we use to kind of say where does the funding go as far as where do your tax dollars go. And you can see that it follows kind of your priority. The sheriff's office gets the lion's share at 11.5 cents. Human services next, coming in at 8.3 cents. The interesting thing this year with schools debt, for instance, for the first time, your local option sales tax is fully funding your debt cost. And this is kind of the confluence of two factors. We've done a lot of work on your debt portfolio over the last couple of years, and I believe, in fact, our last work session, you approved us moving forward with fixing out some of that debt and continuing that rework of the debt portfolio. And then also, you had the buy down. So those two factors plus the additional sales tax, for the first time, you don't have really, in this case, any of your tax dollar, your ad valorem tax dollar going to the school's debt, but it's mostly all funded out of local option sales tax and lottery proceeds. That leaves about $157,000 of local option sales tax that goes into general county administration, which is kind of that bucket where everything that doesn't have a home goes. And I think Michelle asked me earlier, where do we see the lottery funds? And everybody wants to know that. So the $2.8 million you see under intergovernmental revenue related to schools debt, that represents the lottery proceeds that the county gets on behalf of UCPS. So how does that compare then to 2016? As you can see in 2016, that debt service covered about 3.38 cents. The sheriff was about 10.88, still the leader in that group, and human services was about 7.8. And you can see that you had growth in a couple of areas, and that's largely driven because of that additional sales tax. You're dividing up the pie, if you will. You have the same tax rate, but your sales tax is taking up a bigger piece. So when you spread that property tax or the ad valorem tax back across those service areas, you're spreading them back across a more limited pool, so they're each taking a larger chunk of that. And that's a large part of the growth, as well as some additional positions proposed, particularly in the General County Administration for tax and several of those areas. So speaking of the full-time equivalents, we're looking at 1,108 positions. That's an increase of about 58. You can see that there's about a 10 increase in the Sheriff's Department, and then a big chunk, probably the largest part of the growth, coming in Human Services, and that's largely driven by the NC FAST requirements and the changing Medicaid rules and the requirements there. And I know we spent a lot of time in our last work session on the budget talking through this, as well as there's an extensive write-up in your document. But that's our growth, and we're still, if you were to compare that back to 2008, what you would see is that we are just now back to where we were at that time, excluding the sheriff's department. And the sheriff really has been the biggest driver in that personnel growth, and I think that that's appropriate and in line with what you've told us is your priority. And referring to public safety spending, if you were to take the public safety components, the fire marshal's office, the fire departments, emergency medical services, emergency management, the 911 communications center, and the sheriff's office, what you would see is if you went from the actual of 2012 of about $39.5 million, that in the proposed budget we're just under $60 million. So by far the largest chunk of growth in the general fund has gone to that priority area. And what we did in this case, because I remember there was a question, legitimately so, with the fire marshal's office, and what we provided back to you was an analysis that showed that the fire marshal's office actually did include some fire funding at that time, because that's where the additional subsidy payments were charged to that went to the fire department. So we cleaned that up. So this is a true comparison of true fire marshal office cost and fire department cost over that time frame. And you can see how going from 2012, the fire departments were about $7.4 million to the budget for 2017 of about $13.8 million. So those are your kind of your big driver, or the big driver behind your operating budget. One layout real quick for you, the fire department funding. You've seen this slide. I want to highlight just for you the Providence, the Wesley Chapel piece, what used to be Providence. Inadvertently, that was left off your presentation from 2 weeks ago. It's $39,000. It doesn't have a material impact on the rates, but needed to be shown and reflected. This is the funding provided by the county for the services provided out of the station that's primarily funded through Weddington for the outside of Weddington service area, and that's provided by Wesley Chapel Fire Department. And you can see then this provides for capital funding, provides for all of the fund balances that are in those tax districts to go back to the fire departments. The way this is structured for those localized tax districts, or local tax districts, this funds them 75% of their operating through the county-wide rate, 25% through a local tax rate. Also provides for 100% of their capital, with the exception of their fund balance, because that fund balance has to be used in the district from where it came, and based on your policy it should be used on one-time items to reduce debt service or to provide for capital. So we've applied the policy that you've adopted in that process. And as I mentioned earlier, the 4.45 rate is sufficient funding and provides a little bit of growth and for the capital needs, we believe, over the next 3 years going forward. So one of the big chunks being the capital, as you can see on this slide. The fire capital funding eliminates the need for the fire departments to take on debt. As we talked about last time, it's efficient and saves the county a significant amount of money, as well as the fire departments, reduces their exposure on debt to fund that with cash. In fact, if you did the calculation out and you save that interest money, about every 5th or 6th year you're able to fund your capital program with the savings that you've had. Ensures timely replacement of capital. One of the challenges we found is in the smaller districts where they have limited budgets or limited capacity to raise revenue, they are not able to purchase the apparatus on a timely schedule or get the apparatus that they need. So what this does is ensures kind of that level playing field across the county and provides for the needs of all the fire departments going forward. The new stations, replacement and renovations, that'll have to be planned as part of a capital process, because obviously stations are a little more costly than apparatus, generally probably in the $2 to $3 million range depending upon the size and what it is. I've heard some built in Union County recently that are north of $4 million, but still some that are under the $2 million mark. So it depends on what you build, where you build, and how big it is. So one of the things that I think is really important, because I think one of the concerns expressed during our last meeting was that that there was requested capital, or that the county funded capital that was not requested. The way that process works is the fire departments provide to us an initial request based on the form we've been using for years. And then Cindy and I and some of my staff and Curtis Teague meet with the fire departments and kind of walk through their budget requests, talk to them, try to gain a real good understanding of what their needs are before we make any recommendations to you. So capital comes to us in kind of two ways. They can make that formal request during their submission process, which is the paper document we get. Sometimes it's fax, sometimes it's email. Or when we're sitting at the table having the conversation, things can come up that weren't necessarily included in their request, or that in some cases were inadvertently left off their request. So what I have in front of you here, and I'll walk you through this table, is two pieces. And this is kind of sums up where the growth is in the fire funding this year. The first being 2016-17 salary and wages. You can see a comparison between what the 16 request amount, or the 16 budget amount was, and the 17 recommended amount. So there's about 1.1 million, 1.15 of additional salaries. And then you can see the capital funding request. And if you walk through that, you can see it's about $6.2 million that was requested in capital from the departments. The big chunk being the Fairview station funding. They requested a new station and a substation. I believe the station was about $2.5 million, and the station was about 2.4, and the substation was about 700,000. And you can see the ones with blocks around them, or the black boxes around them, represent either requests for debt funding or request for capital reserve, meaning that in some cases in the past, the fire departments have taken a little every year and kind of squirreled that away to the point where they're ready to buy their apparatus. So using our cash funding model and trying to address the needs universally, we went back to the capital funding, went through it and said, okay, if we were to fund that request, not as debt, not as capital reserve, but as a PAYGO program, what does that look like? So you can see we actually reduced the budget request by about $500,000 when you take into consideration the Fairview stations. And you can see those have different components. One of the bigger chunks being Wesley Chapel, and speaking with the fire chief, the then fire chief from Wesley Chapel, what he expressed was concern that they didn't have a ladder truck given the growth that's going on in that part of the county. And they estimated a ladder truck to be about $1 million. So what we propose doing is providing Waxhaw, for instance, $500,000 this year, and we would include $500,000, or recommend including $500,000 next year to purchase that ladder truck. And that has to do with not necessarily the height of their buildings, but their ability to fight structure fires from above and to be able to get the advantage that they need. So that's kind of how we came about to this discussion of what the capital funding should be. Looked back at the fire funding analysis and study that was done, I believe in 2009, and that recommended about 1.6 million at that time. So if you were to net out, for instance, the fund balances in this case, you're looking at about 1.72 of fire funding for capital. The other thing is, in some cases there are, for instance, air packs, where there was a proposal to pay for air packs over 3 years versus replace them all at one time. And it's been kind of our philosophy that we should replace those all at the same time so that everybody's using the similar product and training on the same thing. So this is kind of our process. In addition, I want to point out one thing, because I'm a little concerned that I have heard that the county may be in a position using this funding method to tell the fire departments what type of apparatus to buy, or where to buy it, or what they should be getting. And I don't think that's the intent at all in this case. Generally, the price estimates came from the fire chiefs, not from staff, and unless we felt it was maybe too high, and then maybe we had some conversation. But this is based on the information provided by their fire chiefs as far as what they intend to purchase with that funding, not necessarily what staff thinks they need as far as apparatus and equipment, but what they've asked for. The additional, an additional way to look at this, and this is a long distant cousin of our tax allocation table that I showed you earlier for the general fund. And the way to read this table is, if you look at the very far right column that says adjusted net rate increase or decrease, what this provides for you is a snapshot of how much or what the tax increase or decrease is per district based on the funding level that they are provided through this funding mechanism. This includes capital and operating. So you can see there are really two districts that end up being, in this case, what I refer to as net donor districts. That would be Wesley Chapel, and that's mostly due to their just the volume and the values in Wesley Chapel. And then Fairview, which is due to their payoff of debt. So they had a $60,000 payment that they were making that they are no longer paying. So you can see they're a net donor district by less than 5/10 of a penny. And then Wesley Chapel's a donor district by about 1.75 cents. But other than that, effectively at the average value in all of these districts, given where they were with the $100 rate, they will see an effective tax rate decrease based on that calculation. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about Weddington and Monroe, and this does not take into account any additional funds for Weddington or Monroe. With that, then we have our proposed debt service, and you've seen this. We have about $1,900 per capita. We're still one of the top per capita debt counties in the state, and the majority of that is in school funding with SBCC and our general capital program, and then a large chunk in public works. And this is one of those indicators where we look at all of them together. So the county's outstanding debt's about $440 million. On an annual basis, the lion's share of that, again, goes to UCPS debt at $194 per capita, and then it works your way down. So it's about $27 per capita for public works, although if you remember, public works debt's paid for by the users of that system and the customers. On the proposed revenues, the biggest chunk comes through property taxes, ad valorem taxes. That includes the sales taxes. So you can see about 50% of your funding comes through that. And of course, this is all funds, meaning your enterprise is included in this. So about $57.4 million in charges for services. We have partnerships, various partnerships with other governments, $35.5 million. And then our investments and other revenues, which include other miscellaneous things like rents and so forth, and then fund balance usage. Our sales tax revenue, because I know that this is a question, this has been a question, is how are we growing and where is it going? As we mentioned earlier, all of our sales tax revenue really is going to offset that school's debt. We're seeing a pretty good growth in sales tax, which is a good indicator. And based on the new Article 44 allocation, we had about $3 million increase to our sales tax. So we had about a $5 million total increase. And of that, $3 million was due to the new Article 44, and as specified by that law, that is going to education cost. I think you have three options. It can go to SBCC, it can go to your local schools, or it can go to economic development. And at this point, it's been all allocated to UCPS for debt service. I mentioned sustainability earlier. One of the probably most important things about this budget that we put in front of you is that it is sustainable over time. Provides for those changing needs, provides for the ongoing needs, provides for the third year of the sheriff's program, career development program, as well as the change in their pay grades, provides for the employees we believe we need to provide those services to the county, to the residents, and so forth. So, and you can see going forward that the tolerance level, the sensitivity, as long as you're within plus or minus 3% on this table, then we're right where we want to be. So we're pretty good for the next 5 years at this level, barring, of course, economic or catastrophic situations. This is all else being equal. The capital budget and capital funding, we have about $5.4 million in general capital. The biggest chunk of that going to tax office software. I know I kind of was shocked when John said it the other day, but another reval is right around the corner. And for him to be able to get new software implemented up and running by the time he does his next reval, it needs to happen in 2017. So we're recommending $2.4 million to cash fund that software program. That is not a perfect number at this point. We're going through the RFP process, and I know that they looked at least 5 or 6 different packages. So this has the opportunity to maybe come down, hopefully not above 2.4. Really seems to be the cap side of that. Provides significant funding, $1.83 million for SBCC projects. One of the things we heard, and I believe you heard during the discussion with SBCC, is they have maintenance issues, they have needs for HVAC technology, parking lot, and so forth. So this provides for those needs from one-time money, because those are one-time needs. And then the remainder, carpet replacement, an RFID program, which has to deal with how books are checked out the library, Ag Center digital sign, and that provides for public awareness of what's going on at the Ag Center and so forth. The other thing I'll point out real quick is there's $80,000 included in the budget to do a space needs analysis for the Sheriff's Department, particularly in their administrative offices. The Sheriff had asked for renovation money for the Sheriff's Department, but the challenge is we're not manufacturing any more space out there, so just moving things around, moving walls around isn't really achieving a whole lot as far as space needs. So what we're recommending to you is putting about $80,000 into the budget to study their space needs and what it would look like or what does it need to be in anticipation of possibly either a significant renovation or a future possible bond project related to the sheriff's administrative offices. And then we have our annual facilities renewal and community services renewal projects. And those projects allow us to do roofs, boilers, those kinds of things. So with that, you also have then your water and sewer plan. And as you can see, it's pretty significant. You have about a 6-year program, about $554 million for water and sewer. And this is based on the water and sewer master plans, water and wastewater master plans that you guys have reviewed and given direction to staff on. This is the continuation of that program. We've worked with Public Works to plan debt issuances around that and ensured that the modeling as well as the rate impacts are analyzed, and then that we can come back to you when needed and ask for those rate increases. And I believe that'll probably, our current rate ordinance will run out next year, and we'll come back to you with a recommendation on that at that time. So the next steps in the process, and I know I kind of went kind of fast through that. Tonight's the public hearing concerning the county budget and tentative approval of the county budget. The manager's final proposed budget is due to you by May 30, and that will include her recommendation related to the schools funding as well as the remainder of the components. That's the process we've used the last couple of years. There's a public hearing on June 6th, and that's concerning the UCPS budget, trying to gain some some public input into that process. We'll have our legal public hearing that night, which satisfies the general statute requirement. And then 10 days following that legally required public hearing, you may adopt the budget at any point, obviously before July 1st. So what we try to do is get you set up so that at your meeting in June, in the past couple of years, we've done it at a specially called meeting, you can adopt the budget after that public hearing. So with that, any of the residents at home watching this can watch the previous work sessions at our website. If you have a question, you can send to Ask the County Manager, or you can email public comment to the address there. So with that, Commissioners, I don't know if you have any other additional questions. If not, we can move on to the public hearing.
Yeah, when I look at your fire department funding, the one that was tentatively approved by the board, that looks different. And I heard you make a statement that, because I'm not seeing Monroe or Weddington on this, and the currently approved model taxes Monroe and Weddington. Is this changed from that?
No, so the direction we got from the board at the work session and additionally in the meeting, I believe it was the last meeting, was to move forward with what we refer to as the hybrid model, which is a mix of the localized and countywide tax rate. At that time, there wasn't discussion or direction to the staff to put in funding for Weddington or Monroe. So this model does not include that.
This model does not include taxation from Monroe and Weddington.
Well, the countywide rate will be taxed everywhere in the county. It doesn't include funding back to those two entities.
Okay, so they will be taxed under this plan.
It's a countywide funding, so it's
Okay.
border to border, wall to wall.
I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood one of your statements.
Oh, I could have misunderstood your question, so entirely possibly my fault.
So what's the impact on Monroe and Weddington? I mean, they'll in effect be net donors to the program. And if my numbers are correct, and I may be off because it's changed a little bit, it looks like Monroe will contribute somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 million to the county, and Weddington 1.6. If at 4.4 at the
It's right around 1.4 million for Monroe. A penny in Monroe is about 325,000, and in Weddington, it's in the I think it's in the mid 200,000s. So it's probably right around $1 million on Weddington's side of the house, and probably right around 1.3 on the Monroe side.
and I know we've gone through this during the work session, but if Weddington reduces their municipal rate to 0, that would have an effect on this 4.45 rate and drive it to what number?
If you chose to fund, if you chose to pick up where Weddington didn't fund through their contract with Wesley Chapel, you're looking at, I believe their request, and I just got this afternoon, was about $711,000. Of that, I think you could probably take out the $39,000 already provided, so it's about and then on the order of about $680,000. So It would increase the 445, that particular piece, by about maybe a third of a penny, 0.3.
So they would go 4.8, 4.9 to a countywide rate, correct? That would be the new countywide rate, just under 5.
Assuming that's what you as a board would want to do, you're under no obligation to do that.
Except our policy is safety and security, correct?
Correct.
Why was Monroe, since they're integral to this proposal, correct? Those numbers have to be in here in order for this plan to work, correct?
It's a countywide funding model, so everywhere in the county is included in that.
So why was Monroe and Weddington left off of this chart?
Monroe and Weddington have chosen to fund through alternative means, and they've chosen to fund a different level of service and a different funding mechanism for their service. So it's not any different than any of the other services the county provides. For instance, in Monroe's case, the county provides sheriff and law enforcement services. They choose to have public, our police department, or in Waxhaw, for instance, Waxhaw chooses to have a police department. The sheriff provides law enforcement throughout the entire county, but they've chosen a different model and an additional level of service. So I don't think, in this case, what we're seeking to do is try to stabilize the fire departments we have, and there hasn't been and there wasn't a request by those organizations, back to staff at least, to try to include them in that modeling. So we haven't to this date. As you as a board, if that's your pleasure, can absolutely direct staff to include them. But at this point, and through the last year, as we've been talking about this year plus, couple of years plus, there hasn't been a ton of conversation concerning bringing them in.
And if I might, Commissioner, when we brought to you, I think it was back on, I want to say April 18th, we brought to you the 4 options that had come from the stakeholders. One of those options did carve out Monroe. However, that was not the direction we had received from the board to consider that option.
And at that point, on that April meeting, how many municipalities had you had a conversation with for this plan?
As I stated at that time of that meeting, I think you asked the same question at that point in time, was that I did not feel it was appropriate for me to, since you had 4 options before you, I did not feel it was appropriate as your manager to go out and inquire as to what their reaction was to any of that, because I had not received any direction.
So
From
how
this-
many conversations have you had since then?
I have not had any, well, I take that back. I have met with the city manager of Monroe, probably right after our initial work session. He and I have had a couple of discussions. I know I also spoke briefly to their mayor at my Rotary meeting. So I have had discussions with them. I have not had any discussions with Weddington, but it's my understanding that our chairman has in fact made a presentation to Weddington.
So we're at presentation for tentative approval of this budget, and yet we've had no formal discussions with any of the municipalities that are directly affected by this funding model, correct?
Well, the direction we received from the board was to move forward with the hybrid funding model. So there wasn't, it's not, there is not a municipal approval necessary in the hybrid funding model. So there was nothing for us to converse with them about other than our information's available, and those that asked and called, we provided it to them. So I don't know.
As a courtesy, wouldn't it have been appropriate to go to these fire districts and all the municipalities and have a conversation that under our, you didn't go before because we hadn't given you direction. Once the direction was given, wouldn't it have been appropriate to go to them and have that discussion, since it directly impacts their residents? And under this model, because we set the municipal rate to 0, it is now a general fund and can be used for any use. And we all know if government's given a choice between taxing, raising taxes, or pulling out of the bank, they're going to use a fund balance before they raise taxes. That's one of my concerns in this program.
Well, I want to. There's a couple of things in there. For the purposes of the municipal tax, this doesn't change at all any of those municipalities' ability to fund or to tax for fire service. In fact, all this does is take the established tax districts that you as a board established and sets those to a 25% funding level in the 5 districts, 2 of which were voted on by the residents, 3 of which were established by you as a board. In the other areas, this takes a fire fee and sets that fire fee to 0. So from that perspective, and then to the extent that those fire departments are funded. That's a contract between the county and the fire departments, not necessarily with the municipalities. So there could have been some conversation, but I'm not sure to what end, other than the information that's been provided publicly.
Well, if I look at these numbers, and I'm comparing, let's use Wesley Chapel as an example. The number I have, and I may be off slightly, their current tax rate is 2.82 pennies, correct? And under your funding model, we will go to 5.17 pennies. So again, they will be a net donor. They will contribute $2.8 million to the funding model on a budget or appropriation of 1.8 with, actually it's 1.8 is their budget. So they'll be a net donor of 900,000 and change. And yet, you didn't see any reason to go have a conversation with Wesley Chapel, the municipality?
Well, in this case, Wesley Chapel, the fire department, and Wesley Chapel, the municipality, are two different entities. And the Wesley Chapel Fire Department encompasses, their service area, or the district tax encompasses significantly more territory and area than what's in the town of Wesley Chapel. So when you're looking at Wesley Chapel as a fire service district or as a tax district, it's significantly larger than what the town is, and includes all kinds of unincorporated area as well as other incorporated area in the county. So we had discussions with Wesley Chapel and their fire chief, pretty extensive conversations over the last couple of years about this issue. But from going to each of the towns, we didn't feel we had direction to do that, nor was it necessary for the funding model that you as a board had directed us to implement.
So because you didn't have to, you didn't do it. I mean, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but that's the message I'm getting, and that's my frustration. This whole thing is you didn't have to go to them and talk with them, so you didn't do it. Which the feedback I've gotten is there's a lot of people who don't understand how this works, and now they're just understanding how the funding model works, and we're at the point where we're doing a tentative approval of the budget, and I think we're jumping the gun a little bit, given there's so many other questions that are out there.
Commissioner, and if I may, if there's anyone who should be held responsible for that, it should be your manager. And so I take your comments and I acknowledge your comments. And I apologize if the board felt that that was something your manager should do. I do not think that is something Mr. Yates should have done. He would have had to have done it in my direction.
Point I'd like to make about that direction, with whomever's responsibility it was, I understand talking to fire departments, but what I'm looking at here is taxing the people. And I remember back in the first presentation, we were told about the 4 options. And the 4 options, 2 of them required talking to municipalities. We did not talk to municipalities, so therefore, we only had 2 we could consider. I think option 4, which excluded Monroe and Weddington, required talking to municipalities. We haven't done our homework. Whomever has that responsibility, we haven't done a justice to our citizens to gather the information, and their town council and their town mayors have a responsibility to speak for their people. And not talking to them, you didn't listen to the people. And you know, I hate to say it, we're not the Obama administration. We don't edict out. We need to listen to our constituents and hear what they have to say. We haven't done our job. Whomever that responsibility falls. I'm not trying to bash you, Mr. Yates, but you know, plus this has changed. We voted on one process, and now we're morphing. It needs more research.
Jeff, a couple of questions on what you presented tonight. We've got $3 million in revenue from sales tax that we did not count on. It was a gain that we didn't expect, correct?
You're referring to the new Article 44?
Right. You said in Article 44 that that money can be used for schools, for economic development, or SPCC.
Yes.
Looking at your presentation, SPCC has over $1.6 million in needs from our $5 million fund balance.
For the capital funding.
From the capital fund. So why can that $3 million not be used to provide money for SPCC and rather than our
Well,
capital fund?
in this case, what we're doing is the sales tax, because the debt, let me see if I can get you.
But we weren't counting on that, so I mean, it wouldn't hurt to use it counting on that debt, and we can use it for offset that, so maybe we could.
But at this point, you're going to, the board will have to take a different action as far as what you do with the, if you take the for instance, if you take the just under 3.1 million out of sales tax, what was funding that debt service, you have to replace that with some other source.
Right, but we weren't expecting that. We weren't expecting that money. So, and one more second on the point. Economic development, I think we have about $1.4 million, I think, budgeted, 1 point something million for economic development incentive grants.
I think there's a 1.4 for the grant program, and there's a couple of other pieces of that.
So $3 million that we have available for economic development and for that. Now that I've said that, I want to address some of the concerns from Commissioner Simpson, Lance Simpson, and Commissioner Helms. Last year, we sat in 3 to 4 months worth of meetings at the direction of this board. We listened to concerns from towns. We had a representative from the town of Marvin, a representative from the town of Weddington. We had a representative from Monroe. Their fire chief was in on that. We had representatives from Wesley Chapel. We had representatives from all over different parts of the county, the country, the community. We had a very well represented group of people. And we sat through and listened to the legal challenges. We sat through and listened to the funding challenges. We sat through and listened to meeting after meeting of the challenges facing the fire departments. And through those challenges and through educating myself, through listening to the fire departments and trying to meet even one-on-one with some of the members of the fire commission, we listened to what had to happen. We listened to, again, that you can't donut hole 1 or 2 towns without the approval from all the other towns. There was a lot of challenges that we faced, and through that I made a vote based on my education in that process. The fire chiefs voted for an option that would have given every fire tax district $250,000.
That was up to right?
$250,000. And that comes out of the general fund. And then whatever they needed after that, they would get. So no version of this didn't take subsidies from parts of the county, from the city of Monroe, or from Weddington, and not give it to another part of the county. So there is an emotional side to this. The emotional side is that it's the unknown of going away from tax districts. Well, just this weekend, I educated myself even more about the issue. I went and looked at mobile homes around the county and the effective tax rate that they paid and tried to get an idea of what was going on. I looked at a mobile home in my fire district and they paid a $10 fire fee. I pay a $100 fire fee. I looked at a mobile home in Unionville. They paid a $94 fire fee. I pay a $100 fire fee. Any house in there pays a $100 fire fee. Unionville was $10. New Salem was $94. Jackson was $63.64. We don't even have a fair process in place. There's no fair process of this in place. I look at a $9.7 million property, a business. I guess that they have 2 buildings on that property because they pay a $200 fire fee. If they were to pay the tax, they would pay $4,000 or more. So, there is a completely unfair, unequal system in Union County. And we can fix it. And I intend to be part of fixing it. And this year, because this has been going on year after year after year, and we have complaints about it from one side or the other, but we just keep kicking it down the road. Now, until we change our tax rating of 77.6, there's no tax increase in Union County. If we can find ways to offset Weddington or pay Weddington's cost, there's no double taxation in Weddington. If we find a way to offset Monroe's cost in this, all total for 3.62 pennies, we could pay Monroe's fire department complete cost out of the county rate. And your tax could go down from 26 pennies to 3.62, or it'd be 8 because we'd be adding it on to the whole county rate. Monroe doesn't want that, I don't believe. But let's say that we wanted to change and give Monroe a piece of equipment. $1 million piece of equipment would cover what the Monroe citizens, almost what they pay into this tax. 4 pennies of tax in Monroe generates, again, about 1.4, 1.3 million. So whether we help them with fire apparatus, whether we help them with firefighters, that we help with the city and help with the county, whatever conclusions that we can come to, we can figure this out. This is not complicated. And if it costs $13 million, it's going to cost $13 million no matter what we do. Doesn't change. But I've had many fire chiefs and heard from many from my fellow commissioners that one fire chief said, I don't need that piece of equipment. I don't want that piece of equipment. Don't force that piece of equipment on me. I got that. And if you're able to save money, I'm all for you. I think Commissioner Jerry Simpson has said the same thing. We want you to save money. I don't necessarily think that we need to buy your capital. I think you can go out and find it on your own. If you can find a used piece of equipment, great. The only thing that I really like about this is that if you buy that piece of equipment with county tax dollars versus your tax district dollar or fee district dollar, if something ever happens to your fire department, that piece of equipment doesn't disappear from use from the Union County taxpayers whose help subsidize that in one form or another. And that's what we saw happen with Providence. That's what brings this to a head. When Providence went out of business, the equipment they had was no longer of use to Union County taxpayers. If a meteor hits a fire department in Union County and destroys the whole thing, you as Union County citizens, no matter where you live, are going to help provide fire service for that fire department. It's just the facts. There's not one of us up here heartless enough to let a district go without fire service. And I don't mind speaking for them that because I know they're all good people. So, you got a mobile home, you live in one fee district, you pay an effective tax rate of $1.07 versus what somebody else pays, 90 cents or 80 cents or whatever they're paying. There's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no fairness to it. There's no equity to it. The only thing is that we have perceived autonomy that nobody can tell that fire district what to do with their equipment. We can set your rate to 0. Any future board can set your rate to 0. So if you put an effective tax on somebody or you put a tax rate of somebody 20 cents higher than what it is right now because they need to pay for 4 firefighters to sit at their fire department, is that fair? Is that right? When we can do better? Is it fair that, as you know, you look at the school system and there's a lot of people on one side complains about the school system. Is it fair? Yes, because you benefit from a good school system, just as we benefit from great fire departments. You don't stay in an island. You don't live by yourself in Monroe. You don't live by yourself in Weddington. You depend on your neighboring fire departments to help you. Fire departments from the county go to Monroe. Fire departments from Monroe go to the county. It's the way it's always been done. And if we can find a way that we all have the same skin in the game, that's what we need to find. And if we can help Chief Fowler buy a piece of equipment and offset his cost where they can reduce the taxes on the citizens of Monroe by the equal amount, then we should find it. But we had a lot more revenue last year than we thought we were going to have. Why should it not go to the benefit of all the taxpayers of Union County? Why should it be used to increase spending? That's our challenge. Reduce spending on county government, reduce spending where we can, and work with these municipalities that already have municipal tax districts and help them. It's not even it's way lower than a penny. Weddington's is 33% of a penny in order to help them get out of the situation that they're in, which many on their town council have expressed the interest in doing. So there's a lot of scary stuff to this, the unknown. So I'm going to make a motion later on to add this to the agenda so we can discuss it and put some teeth in behind it. But if I wanted to scare you about it, I really could, and anybody can, But I don't want to scare you by this. I want to tell you that we want to make a good decision for all the taxpayers of Union County. Commissioner Akmus lives in Monroe. My dad owns a business in Monroe, in rental houses. Why would I want to do anything to hurt my dad? Why would he want to do anything to hurt himself? This is about bigger things. It's about doing business in a different way. It's about making sure that if a child is hurt in Islands Crossroads, somebody's going to come help them. If you're in Islands Crossroads visiting neighbors, somebody's going to come help you. My dad has grandkids that live in Indian Trail. He's got grandkids that live in Islands Crossroads. He's got kids that live in different parts of the county, and he pays Monroe City taxes. And he hadn't complained to me one time that he might have to pay 4 pennies, or may not have to pay 4 pennies, or 5 pennies, or 20 pennies, or anything, because he believes that we are trying to do something to fix an outdated system. In 1988, the fire fees were implemented in Union County. The gentleman that did it was named Clayton Laughlin. He was on the State House, and he needed a way to help Wingate Fire Department collect fire dues, collect fire fees. They didn't have a collection method. I'm here to collect my money. I ain't giving you any money. So what they did is they went to the state and they said, listen, we need to be able to put this on the county tax bill, and we need to collect this as a county and enforce the faith of the county behind this. And they did. And it became successful, but it was termed as a Band-Aid, not a solution, a Band-Aid. And ever since 1988, we've been trying to rip that Band-Aid off. It has been ripped off in Henry Bridge, it has been ripped off in Stallings, it has been ripped off in Wesley Chapel, it has been ripped off in Waxhaw, and it has been ripped off in Mineral Springs. It's time to rip it off for the rest of the county. And Mayor Kilgore, we can find ways to work with you and fix it. There's a lot of money comes into county government, and not every dollar of it's got to be spent by county government. Mayor Waxhaw, Bill Dieter, we're trying to help you out. You got a situation where 3.74 of your pennies we could cover with the third of a penny, and that's what we're trying to do. It's all about making things right for as many people in Union County as we can. It's not about stealing. It's not about reducing people's fire fee. It's about that the business in one side of the county pays the same rate as the business in the other side of the county. 4 point whatever, 5 point whatever, 3 point whatever we decide it comes to. But the fact is this model has to change. So we can direct our staff to make efficiencies and find money and change the way they're recommending their budget. We can direct them to do that with a vote of 3 or with a vote of 5. I'd rather it be a vote of 5. They can find the money to offset these things. We can find the money to offset the cost of Monroe. It's not even a penny, it's little bits of a penny. Weddington, same thing, little bits of a penny. But we can all pay the same rate and have the same skin in the game, and you can come out here and complain every year that the fire departments want more money, because you'll see it on your tax bill. And you have not seen it on your tax bill till last year, but it has been there up to a penny already. Nobody ever knew what was happening. Nobody ever cared. But we care enough to be transparent and show you what it's costing you for that service, just as we do for the school system. We believe that you need to see the true cost of your government. And if we're growing huge and growing by leaps and bounds, then you should see that too. And you should be able to come up here and complain. But the thing that we're trying to do is bigger than just an emotional argument of whether we should keep tax districts or not. It's about the future of funding fires in this county, which will get more expensive and more expensive and more expensive unless we can find efficiencies. I hope that explains. I don't mean to be long-winded, but there's been a lot of misinformation. There's been a lot of emotional arguments out there. But we can do it. I believe it in my heart, or I wouldn't be up here saying it. And this is not driven by the county manager. It's not driven by Jeff Yates. The only driven they're getting is me driving them crazy, asking them questions about this. So I believe it. I'm going to make a motion later on to nail it in. And we're going to hopefully move forward with this because we've kicked it long enough. But we can find ways to help you, Mayor. I talked to you the other night about it. Mayor Dieter, I came and talked to y'all about it and answered your questions. Stayed out on the porch till 9:45. I know I left you at 7:30, but stayed out answering questions till 9:45. So yes, I believe it. I've been out there talking to the towns. I've received one email prior to McCain Carr. Thank you for saying it, but prior to McCain, I received one email from a concerned Monroe resident, and I have received no phone calls. I've been making the calls. I called Mayor Kilgore, I went and seen Mayor Dieter. Anybody else I call in here? Called Jeff. How many times I called you?
About every day.
Okay. So if we want to scare everybody to not doing tax districts, just remember that you got $9.7 million business only paying a $600 countywide 4.0048 and a $200 fire fee, when they could be paying $4,000 like the rest of us. They could be paying the same part as the rest of us. You got mobile homes paying $1.07 or even more tax rate in Union County, just county taxes. $1.07 for a mobile home. The people that can least afford it pay the highest rate. So it's a broke system, and we've got to fix it. And I respect Commissioner Helms, and I respect Commissioner Lance Simpson tremendously. There's nobody that studies the numbers better and more often than Lance Simpson. And there's nobody who believes in the fire departments any better than Richard Helms. But this is not an emotional issue. This is an issue, this is not about taking from one and giving to the other. It's about leveling a fair rate on everybody, so we all got the same skin in the game. And if you don't like the fact that your tax district's being taken away, any future board of 3 county commissioners can take your tax rate to zero anytime they want, and they don't have to replace that money. But they're not going to do it because it's not right to do to the citizens of Union County. Nobody is going to go without fire service in Union County as long as anybody with a heart is elected to the county commission. And you wouldn't allow it. You would scream to the rooftops if somebody said there's a fire department that is gone and nobody's servicing that area. You know what would happen? Mayor Kilgore would tell Ron Fowler, send a truck down there, Ron, a couple guys. It's the fact. And the citizens of Monroe will be paying for it. But it's the right thing to do. That's all I got to say.
As you can tell, the chairman and I have very long discussions, and we have very heated discussions on this. So I'll use the facts and go with why I disagree with this. And I really have 3 basic reasons, and it is an emotional issue because you're talking about people's livelihood. Number 1, as this budget is proposed, you're looking at a rate for fire service, basically a countywide rate excluding the schools, to go from 31.93 to 35.9. That is a tax increase. I don't care how you slice it, it's a tax increase. Mr. Yates, I'll ask you, what is the net effect of funding increase from current year to 17?
An additional funding for the fire departments,
Yes, what is the total budget increase?
you're looking at about a $3 million increase.
Which is less than a penny and a half, correct?
It's less than a penny and a half. It's a little over a penny.
So if we have an $11 million revenue growth between 16 and 17. If we stay with the current funding model and develop a 5-year plan, and we use part of that revenue growth and incorporate it into the fire funding model, we can lower the fire fees, we can adjust the municipal taxes, and we can accomplish the same goals that we're trying to now in one fell swoop. The difference is, rather than having anywhere between, roughly a 4.45 to a 4.9 cent increase this year, it would be less than a penny and a half increase. The difference is we're fundamentally changing the way we conduct fire. He uses a mobile home on the eastern side of the county paying a tax rate of 1.07. Well, there's a mobile home just like that sitting in Stallings that's going to go to a 6-cent tax rate, so they're going to have a tax increase. So for every person you're cutting their rate, you're raising the rate on somebody else.
75%.
75% of the county will see a tax increase. And while I don't disagree that we need to fund our fire departments, I believe there's a better way to do that without a 4.5 cent, almost a 5 cent increase in our tax rate this year. On top of that, we are eliminating any control that the county has in using this tax for fire service. If we have a fund balance, or we have excess revenue that comes in, $10 million, let's say, over the next 5 years, and that board that's sitting down 5 years from now decides to use that $10 million for a building, there is no law that can prevent us from doing that. That board can sit down and vote that $10 million to go wherever it wants to go. Under the current model, it has to stay in the fire tax. And the county has the ability to create a countywide fire tax. If we're going to go to this model, we need all the municipalities to buy into this and believe that there's a way to get there within 5 years, and it keeps the fire funding in the county, and it keeps for that use only. And we don't do it overnight, and we don't have a 5-cent increase. We do it in increments, and we get there, but we develop a plan to get there. I think this is a knee-jerk reaction to get where we want to go because people are tired of talking about this. But I believe it is the wrong way to go. You have a significant increase on the population. We can do the same thing, provide the same service and support to those fire fee districts that need additional equipment and personnel with less than $0.015 increase versus the 4.9. And I believe that's the right way to go, and we maintain those funds to be used within the fire district, the bulk of them. That $0.015 until we set up a fire district could be used anywhere, but it's a lot less at risk than what we have now, or a lot more at risk than what we have now. That $0.015, if we switch to 4.5 cents, that 4.5 cents, 5 cents can be used whatever they want to, whatever any board wants. And we all know, again, most boards are going to use whatever funds are available to make it balance. And I just fundamentally disagree with the way this is being done, because there will be a tax increase, and this is something that I don't believe is necessary. Again, we've had $11 million in revenue growth. Surely out of that $11 million in revenue growth, we can come up with a way to fund the fire departments without a 4.5, 5 cent increase.
All right, and I agree. That's what I was just saying a while ago, because until we set the rate, we don't know. But you were saying that for $0.015, we can fix this. But if you add $0.015 to Wesley Chapel's rate, they go up to close to 4 or 5.
No, we use that $0.015 out of the $11 million growth that we have in revenue.
Well, why can't we use the 11 to do anything? I mean, you still have the same rate, and if the rate goes away in Wesley Chapel completely to 0, if the rate goes to 0 in Hemi Bridge, then you save them. What's the rate in Hemi Bridge right now?
It is the all-in rate in Hemi Bridge. Let's see, where's that? There it is, 574.
So 572? 574? Where's Hemi Bridge on here? I'm looking. Okay, 574. So if it goes from 574 to 5 or 4 or whatever, that's tax cut. It may not be a county tax cut, but when they get their tax bill, they're going to see 0 instead of 574. They're going to see 0, 574, or 4.5 or 4.5 or whatever we do. And no matter what we do, it's a different rate. It's a lower rate than what it would be. So with this model that you're seeing on the screen, this is the manager of what she's proposing tonight. We can go through. The manager at that meeting said, I challenge you, not quite, but
I wasn't quite that bold.
You were bold. You were bold. She said, we recommended a budget, and now it's up to you to find cuts. And we're going to throw a challenge back to her, I hope, but we're going to get this fixed. And I believe that we can do it without any increase, and most citizens in Union County should see a lower tax bill.
With the exception of Monroe and Weddington, unless we find ways to offset their cost, which with Monroe, it's about $1.4 million to totally offset the cost of a 4.5. Again, whether we do it with equipment, that's Chief Fowler in the committee meetings. That was one of the things we talked about, doing back some equipment, doing some help with that. If we offset Weddington and pay their fire bill from Wesley Chapel, they're right part of the county plan, and actually would cut their tax rate from 3.74 to a lower number. But we can hold county spending at roughly 164 versus 167, and nobody's rate changes. Monroe doesn't pay 4.5 cents more.
Well, but my rate stays 90-something cents, and your rate stays 76 cents or whatever. Or that guy in the mobile home that I was talking about, his rate stays $1.07.
But the difference is, you're getting that extra $3 million just like you paid for it, but you're not.
And
that's going to service those departments.
And the $9.7 million business pays a $210 fire fee.
And I told you, over a 5-year plan, we get to the exact same point. The difference is, we keep the funding in the fire departments.
That was
It cannot be moved anywhere. You and I had this discussion. Stoney and I had a long discussion. I told him there were 3 concerns that I had on this budget. Number 1, it was a tax increase. And number 2, I did not want to reduce any of the expenditures this year just as a kicking it can down the road. So if we were able to come within the flat rate that we currently have now, so we didn't have a tax increase, and we were not postponing an inevitable increase down the road just to make it look good this year, the only other caveat I had is we had to have a countywide fire tax district so that it stays within the fire tax. And to my knowledge, at this point, none of those 3 are under this budget.
What would be how would we establish a countywide fire tax district? What would be the requirement?
Well, I think we laid out for you, and I'd have to go back, but I think we laid out for you the steps in establishing a tax district. But I think a wall-to-wall tax district has some inherent challenges in it, as far as one of the tests you have for setting up a tax district is that there's not a conceivable way or there's not a reasonable way to fund it otherwise. So I think you'd be challenged because essentially a wall-to-wall tax district is a tax, just a general tax. So I think there's some issues with that, and of course I'm trying not to look at Jeff because I know he's staring me down because I'm playing attorney.
Should I have asked you, Jeff?
But I think that there's a lot of steps in that process, and when we advised you about your options under the models, the funding models, it wasn't that we said we couldn't do the tax district options. What we said is those are 2017 options. Those are not going to be done for 2017. They're 2018 options. So I think the challenge you have in this discussion is that you're talking about really 3 things when you're talking about the general fund side, and you're talking about the $3 million. The funding that you have goes to the Sheriff's Department, it goes to Human Services, and it goes to debt. That's the majority of the funding you have in the general fund. So getting $3 million out, you can't cut it out of the debt because that's a legal requirement. That's the first thing that comes out of the top. So then you're left with Human Services and the Sheriff's Department. And largely the Human Services Department comes through state and federal funding that pays for about half of their services. So for every dollar you take out of that, sometimes you're hurting yourself more than a dollar that's your additional dollar. So then you're left with the bulk or the 11 cents of that tax rate coming out of the Sheriff's Department. And I think this commission in the past has put a lot of effort and energy into deputies, fixing the deputy salaries and pay going forward. So I think when you start shrinking down that pie, because the budget is balanced at this point, and there's a lot of chunks that go into it. Commissioner Simpson, you keep talking about the $10 million increase from year to year. The vast majority of that's in the capital. Well, it's 160.
10.97 million.
It's okay. So on the expenditure side, on the revenue side, it's about 10 million either way. But when you're looking at it, there's the funding on the capital side is a big chunk of that, which we outlined, which a large chunk of it, 1.8 million, goes to SPCC, $2.5 million or $2.4 million into your tax software, which would otherwise be debt that the county would have to carry. So I think some of those growth areas, when you start to parse them out, the commission, based on direction we've received at different times and your priorities, it's going to be a real challenge. It's like a balloon. Once you push in one area, it's going to pop out somewhere else. So and I think that's where Cindy was when you guys were talking about it, and you kind of joked about Cindy saying that this is where we're at. The managers recommended to you a balanced budget. To unbalance that by cutting out the funding or moving the funding requires a necessary cut somewhere else. So I just kind of caution you with that there's not a lot of places to go where you don't start to harm your other objectives. What the managers proposed to you as a balanced budget reflects what we believe that the needs are in the county, or else we wouldn't have recommended it. So,
But if I have a belief there's another need, is that belief any less valid than your belief?
It depends on, you as a board have adopted tax rates in separate chunks. So there's a fire tax rate and there's a general county tax rate.
Well, let me ask you this: if we can't do a countywide fire tax district, which I have no problem with, because they also get allocated sales tax dollars, and that would automatically come off the top before we did anything else. If we can't do that without a vote of this board, without getting input from 14 different municipalities, if we can't do that as a board, by putting it in separate, why do we separate it into a line item fire tax? When every year before last year it was done, it was entered into everything else. Do we separate it and so it can be indicated where it comes from and that we can see it? And if we took it away, wouldn't that be caught by people in the public? Wouldn't that be caught by a commissioner that was concerned about that?
As part of your budget ordinance, you can, in fact, set it aside. And one of the questions I heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, But one of the questions I heard is the fact that if there are excess revenues, they can be taken elsewhere, where you can control that through your budget ordinance. What you cannot control is the actions of subsequent boards.
Right.
And, you know, as we know in many of our arguments and many of the policy decisions that we make on this dais, 3 votes can overturn any of those decisions at any point in time, in most cases.
Mr. Chairman, I have to agree totally with Commissioner Lance Simpson. You and I have had heated discussions as well. We've agreed to disagree. And the point I made with Chairman Russian is that this board tentatively approved option 2. Now we're tweaking it here, tweaking it there, and a lot of the things the commissioner has talked about it tonight, we haven't discussed as a board.
If you don't mind me interrupting you for 1 second. After we voted for option 2, we as a board, I believe, voted 5-0 to go to option 5. And we opened up the door to inspect other options. So just in fairness to me, we opened the door as a board to research other options and try to find a better way.
We also had another vote, 3-2, when all commissioners
Before
were present.
that.
After that. It was after that.
We asked for option 5, which
To
was,
see what option 5 was.
you know, a countywide, or a.
Countywide,
a
separating all the
county
fire tax to
district
fee districts.
Covering the fee districts.
Right.
That is not the model presented.
No, but we got that, we got information back
You
on
got
that as a board.
diluted information. You didn't get exactly the comparison between what it was and what it do. Point I'm making is that a lot of the things that you've talked about is tweaking here, tweaking there, and I know that Commissioner Jerry Simpson made the point, you know, we've been kicking this can down the road, and I agree with you. But he was tired of it, he wanted to get it over with. Well, this is too important to get it over with.
Well, we gave it a year. We gave it a year from last year. Do we give it another
Well,
year?
I understand.
And
but
another year.
Also, in
And another year.
October, the stakeholders completed, and they came back with one recommendation. We heard all 4 that they discussed. However, when we didn't go out and investigate what our citizens would say about 2 of those options, we didn't do our homework. And so therefore, we've got work to do a quality project, being fair to our citizens, so we don't have to tax Monroe and Weddington over and above. And, you know, the 5 fee districts are going up. You know, the 4.45, if you look at that. The other piece is right now, I think most of the fire tax districts, their taxes are sufficient to support their.
That's not the case. In fact, if you
Well,
look
it-
at the-
Mr. Chairman, may I make a recommendation?
Yes.
You have members of the public who have signed up to speak on this issue. I think it's appropriate that we hear from the members of the public, and then we can continue our discussion among the commissioners.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a list of folks that have signed up to speak before the Board of Commissioners. First of all, we have Bill Dieter from Weddington.
Thank you. My name is Bill Dieter. I'm the mayor of Weddington, and I'm speaking here tonight on behalf of the Weddington Town Council and Weddington residents. I'm here to speak to you about the 4.45 cent countywide fire tax that is being proposed. We have very serious concerns about the impact of this fire tax on Weddington residents. We understand the complexities of this issue, and I know it is a very, very tough decision. However, while we are fully supportive of funding for fire service, our objection is with the method you are pursuing. We know that a stakeholders committee was created last year to develop alternatives to address this issue. However, county staff has not put forth the stakeholders committee alternative that would have protected Weddington residents from this additional tax burden of almost $1 million. I have personally attended your workshops where Mr. Yates has done a very admirable job of presenting detailed data and analysis. He has truly done a lot of work, and I applaud his efforts. However, in every presentation, his plan says no assumptions for Monroe or Weddington. Now you're getting ready to turn this plan into an action, and to our dismay, there are still no assumptions for Monroe and Weddington. Again, we agree that actions need to be taken to ensure all county residents have access to an appropriate level of fire service. However, to have Weddington residents who already pay for full-time fire protection through their town property tax, in addition to pay a county fire tax with no offsets, is not fair. Actually, in our mind, it is double taxation. You're asking Weddington residents to pay a total fire tax, town and county, of 7 to 8 cents. Weddington, along with Monroe, will be the only municipalities in Union County to be burdened with this double tax. We're talking about almost $1 million or $200 a year for the average Weddington household. This is in addition to what they are currently paying in their town property tax. The county VFD budget is an increase of, originally I had $2.5 million. Now I'm thinking it's somewhere between 2.8 to 3.6 in fiscal year 2017. Under your current proposal, Monroe will be taxed an additional $1.5 million, and Weddington will be taxed almost an additional $1 million for a total of $2.5 million. I don't have to remind you that these two towns already pay for fire service in their property taxes. We appreciate Chairman Rushing accepting the invitation we extended to him to come and speak before the Town Council and Weddington residents. Your statement of opposing double taxation of Weddington and Monroe is much appreciated. In closing, we urge the Commissioners to reconsider other alternatives that you have before you that will take into consideration the fire taxes already being paid in Weddington. Thank you.
Next, we have Butch Pyler and Wesley Chapel.
Commissioner Rushton, fellow commissioners, Clerk Lynn West, County Manager Cotto, thank you for the time that you're giving me to come speak to you tonight. I've learned a lot listening, and I agree with kicking the can down the road, but I guess before I get into my little spiel, I ask, is there a problem with fire service somewhere in the county?
You want me to answer that?
Please.
We have had some districts within our county that were on probation. We don't have any districts that are on probation now, but we have had some districts who were unable to meet the standards of the state with respect to responding to calls.
And that's in that district, is that correct?
Yes, and we've had more than one district in Union County within the last year in that situation.
And how do we solve that?
Actually, our emergency services worked with those departments in many cases by looking at what the issues were as to why they were on probation. We also added staff, we added apparatus, so we had to put additional resources into those areas.
Who paid for that staff and apparatus?
The taxpayers did.
Who? Which taxpayers?
Taxpayers in those districts.
Of that district, or Union County? Any supplements going to those districts?
Absolutely.
So actually, the taxpayers in the whole county pay for it, is that correct?
That's right.
Yes and no. What happens is within the taxing district of that particular district, they are all charged, I think in all cases, they were a fire fee district, so they would have paid up to $100. And probably all but maybe 2 of our fire districts, we provide an additional supplemental amount from the general fund. And so that amount went to the 2 districts I'm thinking of, they do receive a supplemental amount from the county.
Well, I'm hearing tonight different, I don't quite understand. Sounds to me like everybody's not getting charged the same thing in their district.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Why is that?
I don't know that there's an easy way to explain this. The way the fire districts are set up is the monies have to be contained within the district. So a lot of it is based upon the needs of the district, what the property values are within those districts. You have 5 fire tax districts that all pay varying rates because of what is the value of a penny in that particular district versus the level of service that they receive. on those that are fire fees as to what level of service those particular fire districts provide to their residents. So it is, it's a highly unusual system where from a funding perspective, there is not a great degree of equity, which is when staff was directed 2 years ago to look at this issue. I think some of the concerns expressed by some of the commissioners were a lack of equity, quality as it related to tax rates, which is why it then went to the stakeholders group. And the stakeholders group, and I believe you sat on that group, sir, evaluated this for a number of months and came up, had a number of, I think, options that you looked at, but I think there were 4 that you ranked that were presented to the Board of County Commissioners back in April.
And Butch, we're going to give you your time over, so if you hear
I'm sorry,
if
yes.
you hear a beep, don't worry about it. We're going to set it back for you to have time. Let me tell you how bad it is.
I know.
My neighbor beside of me, been there about the same time I have, pays a $10 fire fee. I pay a $100 fire fee. I thought everybody paid a $100 fire fee.
I did too.
Yeah, I did too.
And I went back
We
and
know.
checked. I own a little bit of land down on Medlin Road and a little bit on Nash Road, and I'm paying 17 on one and 28 on another one. And I says, and they're both about the same equal, and I don't quite understand that.
A mobile home in New Salem that I've drove by since I was a boy pays $94. And a mobile home in Unionville that I know was put there maybe 15 years ago pays $10.
I'm not going to get, I retired from Wesley Chapel Chairman of the Board of Directors about 3 years ago, and a boy came and asked me to take the job about 26 years ago, and I said, yeah, I guess I could. And I said, how long? And he says, well, the man you replacing just died. Well, I decided I'd retire before I... And when I started, I had no idea. I really had no idea, except I was going to sell them an acre of land in 1975 for $3,000, donate $1,000 to the fire department, and I'd make $2,000. 30 years later, sold it for $150,000 because my uncle gave them land for $1, and I never did reimburse him. But I had no idea what people or how much it took to run a fire department. And for so many years, not only Wesley Chapel, but other fire departments, volunteers. We're getting out of that volunteer stage. We're going into a paid municipality fire department. I hear Weddington and Monroe about their taxes. Well, the only difference in Wesley Chapel, the county doesn't own one piece of equipment, one piece of land, or a building in Wesley Chapel's fire district. The corporation does. Now, if the county, what you ought to do is just buy out all the fire departments and take over the fire business.
Let me ask you, Butch.
Sure,
The money that was put in there was paid by Wesley Chapel taxpayers.
that is correct.
So they would have to pay double to buy it out.
That is correct.
That is correct. And so now if we move forward,
Would like to do that,
Right.
Mr. Rushing, rather than their tax go up 80%.
well, the tax has not got to go up 80%. Your tax rate in Union County is 77.6 cents now. And plus your 3 pennies or whatever, plus your 0.48 pennies, 0.048,
2.82.
right, whatever it is, add it
Not what we
to,
gonna pay?
right, add it to the other. Well, it depends on if we cut some other county department. If you pay the same county rate, if we take and reassess our priorities, we readjust our priorities, then you could pay the same rate or even lower than you did last year. But you're going to have help from that $9.7 million business in the other side of the county. Well, it ain't helping now.
Well, I think the best thing you could do would be what y'all suggested. Get it straightened out.
That's what we're trying to
I
do.
would try, if I were you, if I'm sitting on that board tonight, I would leave the tax just like it is for one more year. And you say, oh, no.
Well, we did that last year.
We got it. We said that last year, but you didn't act.
We did. We had
Well, we
committee
acted,
meetings.
but you haven't acted.
We had committee.
You
meetings.
haven't done, as someone has mentioned tonight, a lot of homework. There's a lot of homework to be done. But if you leave it like it is for a year and stand before the public and put it in the paper, we're going to change it So at the end of the next year, we're going to have everything just right. You're going to change it, and you don't know whether it's going to be right or not. You're hoping it is. You're doing on a wishbone instead of a backbone.
I'll give you one better. We sent a resolution to the town of Weddington last year saying it was going to change, and they didn't evidently get that resolution.
Well, I disagree totally. I say strongly. I think our board of directors, we've got as good board of county commissioners as in surrounding counties anywhere. I'll stand behind each and every one of you 100%. But I disagree very, very strongly with the way this budget is worded for fire service. Thank you.
Thank you. McCain Carr.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, my family's in the real estate business. It's what my dad does, and it's what I'm getting into. Location and tax bracket, coming from location, are something that you have to pay attention to when you're in the real estate business, because you get what you pay for. In Monroe, we are already paying for a fire service. We are paying for a fire service that has the ability to put out airplane fires. So it just seems a little redundant to me to throw in like a Charlotte level tax to the city of Monroe for something we already have in place. Thank you.
Elton Hardy. You want to finish?
Oh, no, sir.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Rushing, thank you for coming and speaking the other day. Appreciate the information. I like a lot of different things that you say. There's no fair process in place. It's incomplete. It's unfair. We can fix it. We can do it. And I hear what the other commissioners are saying, that we're not quite there yet with the solution. And it may be just a little premature. And I appreciate that it got kicked down the road a year, but it's still, the cake's not cooked yet. And with that in mind, it made me think about it. I'm sure you've all heard the story about the ant and the grasshopper. And, you know, the town of Monroe and the town of Weddington have prepared in advance and had fire service and paid the expense of fire service. And the thing that the residents have said to me when I've talked to different ones, have said taxation without representation. I said, no, we've got representation. What we're going to have is double taxation in Monroe and in Weddington. And you know, the voters remember that as much as anything. But I think the effort here is very good, and I'd love to see a 5-0 vote on a more developed plan that services both sides of the county. And I agree with you. I don't like the idea of having one guy paying $10 and another one paying $100, or the industrial product that's paying little to nothing relative to their overall cost. But it sounds like we're not far from a solution, but we're not at a solution tonight. But we need a 5-0 vote on a more complete plan. I thank you.
Thank you. Bobby Kilgore.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for allowing me to come before you tonight and speak. I kind of wrote most of my stuff down because I don't want to ramble too much, and I don't want to take a whole lot of time rambling. So, but let me say, first of all, I am Bobby Kilgore, the mayor of City of Monroe, and I'm here representing the City Council and our citizens of the City of Monroe. And I'd say good evening to you. In reference to the proposed fire tax of 4.5%, which will tax the citizens of Monroe, I would respectfully ask the commission to table this tonight and look at the proposals that was presented by the stakeholders that you folks appointed. I think, if I remember correctly, and I may be wrong with these, it was 4 or 5, but the one recommended from the stakeholders is not the one you folks are looking at. You appointed the stakeholders to come back, and I can't say you didn't consider it, but you didn't go with any of the 4. So I would ask you to table it and go back and look at that, or look at something else. If I have the correct information, this is not what was proposed, as I just said, but it's unfair for our citizens to help pay for fire service all across the county. And if it's approved, our citizens will contribute $1.3 to $1.5 million. And I heard you talking a little bit ago about somebody pays $10 and I pay $100. If we want to lower our standards a little bit and not have the high-priced property that the $100 are paying, we could all pay $10. But some of us does a little better than others. So it's only fair, I think, for the lower guy for the $10 and the top guy the $100, if that's the way you want to do it. That's up to each individual how one. But if I understand it right, that's why some pays 10, some pays 100. But we would be paying, our citizens would be paying 1.3 to 1.5 million dollars. This was cost our citizens, and they're already paying for a fire department that services our city well. Our department is classified a number 3 rating, which is a great rating, as most firemen will know. There's a very few departments across the state that's rated number 1. So there's a few more rated number 2 than we come in number 3, and that affects all insurance people in the city of Monroe, their insurance budgets, as we know. So Fire 3 is a good rating, and I commend our department for that. And also, they also are national accredited. Our department works well with all 17 fire departments. And we have for many years, and I can say that for many years because I go back many years with volunteer fire departments. We call them, they call us, and we're Johnny on the spot, and they Johnny on the spot. They've done a great job and continue to do a great job. And we will continue to do that. Well, we don't have to be charged another 4.5% to get us to go out there. Our department has 80 professional firefighters. They're funded by the city. They provide fire suppression, technical rescue, hazardous material response, emergency medical first responders, fire code administration, and fire investigations, and any disaster response. Our fire department provides county-wide service through the hazardous materials response team. If there's a hazardous material spill, we got it. We don't send you a bill. We shouldn't send you a bill. Or as I'm mayor, we won't send you a bill. But keep in mind, we do that. As mayor of the city of Monroe, at 4.5 tax rate is unfair and unjust to our residents and to our industry. And I think that should be excluded. This 4.5 cent will put a burden on the existing industry in our county. If you stop to think, and maybe you have, but I wonder, if you stop to think what this is going to do for the industry, not just our citizens, but our industry in the city of Monroe, I can name several large, and y'all know large industries. Allvac for one. What they already pay to the city and county is tremendous. What Tyson Food is already paying to the city and this community is tremendous. Think about our industrial park. That is in the county also. That's not just city, that's in the county also. And you know, we've added, I may stand to be corrected, but I'm going to say $3.5 million, how many million was it, Mr. Patay, that we added to the park in this 1 year? $280 million just in Monroe in 1 year in the industrial park. But we got large corporations. We got large people in the industry right here in this county, but also in this city. I want you to stop and think what burden you're going to put on these folks. Another 4.5%. I don't have a magic wand, but there's a better way, I think, to do this. Mr. Chairman spoke about we can refund you back some money, or we can buy you a piece of equipment. I stand here for you and say, I don't want you to refund me. Just keep that, what you're going to refund me, refund the city of Monroe. And I can't speak for Weddington, but probably he may say the same thing. Instead of refunding that, just keep that, and let's call it a wash. Why should we send you 4.5 and you turn around and write us a check? Just call it a wash and cut us out and go with, I believe it was the number 4 that was recommended from the stakeholders that you folks appointed. But again, I say, it's about taxation for the citizens of Monroe. But I again say it's about taxation for our industry. And when I say our industry, I'm talking about the county as well as the city, because it's all of our industry. We're sending another 4.5 burden to this industry. And you folks know, and I know too, when the next industry comes down here to look at Union County, they're gonna look at this, and I'm gonna promise you, some of them gonna walk away. I don't know who they be, I don't know how many they are, I don't know, I can't tell you that, nobody know that. But they're gonna walk away from Union County because they're gonna be paying city tax to fund a fire department that is strong. It's as strong a fire department in this state. And I believe y'all will agree with me on that. And I'll underline it. They're as strong as they are in any fire department in this state of our size, and probably stronger than most cities that's larger than us. We got a good fire department. We work with the county already. Always work good and continue to work. I can't say enough about the volunteers. I've worked with them. I work side by side with them. I can't say enough. But I don't see a point that we should tax our citizens and these corporations another 4.5%. And I say again, if you want to pay $10 instead of $100, I'd buy me a mobile home and put it on a half-acre lot. Then you can pay $10. If I'm paying $100 out in the county fire tax service, and somebody down the road is only paying $10, if I'm thinking right, and I believe I'm right, that means that they live in a lesser value home than I do. And that's my problem. If I don't want to pay $100, let's move down. Let's move it. But gentlemen, think about it. Think hard. What this is going to do, not only to our citizens, but the industry of this Union County. And I say again, all that large company pays big bucks. Tyson Foods, large company, pays big bucks. I could go on and on and on, and y'all know where they are. Y'all know who they are. But I request, table this and go back and look at it and see if there's not a better way to do this. I know there's a better way. Tony, I appreciate you calling me the other night. Thank you so much. Thank you for letting me stand and address you tonight.
And Mayor, I do want to answer a couple of your questions. I'd love to move down to a mobile home, but in many fire districts, fire fee districts, the mobile home pays $100. $150,000 pays $100, and the $10 million home pays $100. So it's not where you move in those districts. It's the same $100 fee no matter what you own.
Well, tell me why one pays $10 and another you pay $100.
It don't make any rhyme or reason. There's no sense to it.
Well, is it not based on property tax?
No, it's
Now,
based
what-
on
Well, what
the rooftop. It's based on the rooftop. If you have a rooftop, you get charged as much, except for in some of them, I just found out this weekend that some don't pay equal amounts, some pay a different amount.
Well, I hear what you said, but why are you paying $100 and your neighbor paying 10? There's got to be an answer to that.
It's got to be, and we're going to get to it. We're going to find the answer.
Somebody has got to know why you sent a tax bill
Because
for
the same,
$10 to this gentleman and $100. There's got to be an answer.
the same mobile home in a neighboring district pays the $100. It's just some don't, some do, and I asked today trying to figure out why, we didn't know why.
Well, that's another reason.
And if we set your 26.7, or about 25.77 tax rate for fire, if we gave you an offset 1.4 million, you could set that back down the same amount of pennies to
Where I
make
got a
that.
minute to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can send me 1 million, 2 million, what, just keep.
But see, we can't donut hole. We can't donut hole unless we have approval from all 12 or other 13 other municipalities. So it's a legal issue. Is that correct, Jeff?
You tell me the only way you could do a fire tax in Union County is charge everybody.
Countywide.
City of Monroe.
Countywide. The only way we can do any tax countywide without the approval from municipalities is creating districts.
How did they come up with 4 or 5 different suggestions?
Number one suggestion that you were talking about was $250,000 a person. It's
You know,
confusing.
I understand, and it's, I could say this and you could say that, well, but the bottom line is this.
We can find a better way. I agree.
You can find a better way.
find a better
number
way.
one. It is not fair to tax the city of Monroe, and I'm gonna say wedded, and I don't have any reason, I'm not speaking for, but I'm gonna say them, simply because we should not have to pay another tax for fire for the county.
Okay.
And Now, we're not only killing our residents, we're killing our industry, gentlemen, and I hope you'll table this and look at it. Thank you very much.
Gary Anderson.
Gentlemen, thank you for letting me speak, and I know it's late, and I'm Gary Anderson from City Council here in Monroe. So I'm going to be brief with my comments, but just follow up to a few things that the mayor said. And I want to commend Commissioner Helms and Commissioner Lance Simpson for saying that, you know, the bottom line is more homework needs to be done. It is discouraging that this proposal came down. And, you know, when I look at everything in this packet tonight, Monroe's not here. Monroe's not listed anywhere here. So, you know, I have to wonder, you know, what was the thinking behind taxing the citizens of Monroe? But we're not here. We're not listed anywhere on this tonight. And that's discouraging. And I encourage you to do more homework and do a plan that's fair to everybody. We have our own fire department, and we work very well with the county when it comes to fire calls. The county helps us, and we help the county, and we're going to continue to do that. If there were a structure fire anywhere in the county tonight, and they needed our help, we'd send whatever they asked for. And the county would do the same for us. If we had a major fire, the county would help us, and we want to continue with a positive working relationship, and we certainly don't want the decision of the way it reads right now to increase Monroe's taxes by $1.4 million and ultimately Monroe not getting anything back, which, according to these documents. We don't want that to cause any animosity between our firefighters and what we do for them and what they do for us. We have a great relationship back and forth between the departments, and we want to continue that. But I really strongly believe that more homework needs to be done so that this is fair for the citizens of Monroe. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. That's everybody on the list, and now close the oh, you.
I wasn't on the list, but
That's fine. You're welcome to speak.
I'm doing this.
Anybody have a problem with that?
No. Okay, great. Just had a couple notes that I took.
Please add your name and where you live.
I'll do that. I'm less afraid of being hit by a meteor. I am more afraid of misappropriation of funds by the government. And everything that I'm hearing here sounds a bit like, yeah, you've spent a lot of time on it and you don't want to kick anything further down the road, but it still doesn't sound like you've done your homework. It sounds like this is, no pun intended, it sounds like you're rushing, Mr. Chairman. And I'm afraid of that because the unintended consequences you can have, or, you know, this whole notion that I'm sensing of pass the bill so we can find out what's in it, all this stuff is sounding like the Obama administration, like somebody had said before. It's quite concerning, to say the least. I don't want to see us rush to make a rash move on this just because the current system is broken. The examples you're bringing up sound like horrible examples. It clearly does need to be fixed. It doesn't need to be fixed wrongly or expeditiously just for the sake of getting it fixed, because then you're going to be stuck with other headaches later. So why I wanted to speak tonight was to talk about that. This ripping the Band-Aid off sounds more to me like we're putting the Band-Aid on somebody else and ripping it off of them to fix the problem, and that sounds equally ludicrous. So I really would like to see a bit more of a calm, level-headed approach, much like Mr. Simpson has been doing here, where he's keeping the emotions out of it, not threatening us with the scary stories that you can tell. I'd really rather a cool, calm, and concerted approach at this. Yeah, you've kicked it down for another year. It sounds like you need to finish the job because you haven't spoken to the different municipalities other than some of the offshots that you've done. And we're not talking about a small amount of money. We're talking about all the unintended consequences and the possible, you know, misdirection of funds that could come hereafter. It makes me wonder what's the backstory here? Why are we rushing for this? Is this to make a county fire service? Is that what the desire is behind this? Or is it something else? There's just leaving all these kind of questions out here that I just don't find are being answered in this rush to judgment about trying to pass tonight a program that sounds incomplete.
Thank you. And you're not the first to use that rushing.
Sir, can you provide us, I'm sorry, can you provide us just with your name and your place of residence?
Certainly, I won't leave here without doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, did I? I'm sorry, Robert. Robert, I couldn't read it. I was scared to read that.
That's fine. Robert Yanchek, I'm from
Robert
Monroe.
Yanchek.
Like I said, I'm not going to take up a lot of time saying the same things that Mr. Anderson and this gentleman said. As an outsider, I haven't been to a whole lot of county commission meetings, but I do attend a lot of city council meetings. It does seem like this thing has kind of been pushed through the last second without a whole lot of input from other municipalities and the citizens. And it was kind of disturbing when we come in and we don't see Monroe on here. And I know this is for fire department funding, and we're not going to get any funding, but you think somehow we'd been listed on here as far as our contribution was going to be and where it was going to go. We have a great fire department. The county fire department's great also. And like I said, we all work together on those sort of things. The city also handles a lot of the county, shared responsibilities. We will have the homeless shelter in Monroe. The city contributes a lot to that, which it's a huge need, and it's going to get even worse in the future. So I think it's a shared thing, but I don't think this is being looked at in its entirety. I think, like Mr. Simpson says, maybe we should table the thing, get the city leaders involved, and say, let's sit down together and figure out what's the best, whether, the payback idea, which I'm not a big fan of that, but, something that prevents us from taking a burden for something we're not going to get out of. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now close the public hearing. We move on to informal comments. Do we have any informal comments? Todd Smith.
Thank you. My name is Todd Smith. I live at 5051 Scaly Bark Court in Salins. I have some handouts I'd like to give you. I will be very brief. I just found out that there is a convicted felon that put a gun to a man's head that is diagnosed with a mental illness, that is staying overnight with my children right down the road, right under your noses and my nose.
Mr. Smith?
Yes, sir.
We've talked about this before, and there's a restraining order against you for contact. If you know of a convicted felon that's pointing a gun at your children, the sheriff is right there, and I would suggest you take it outside with him and file a report right now, immediately, in post haste.
Yes,
But
sir.
as far as continuing on with this conversation, you've been told many times that we're not going to let you violate the restraining order about talking about your family in this form. So if you have something to complain about the taxes or the fire departments, complain away. We're not going to talk about your family.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay. That's all that we have signed up for public comment, informal comments. We'll move to additions, deletions, and our adoption of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Before we do that, I would like to add an item to the agenda for discussion concerning fire funding.
All right.
Can we do that?
Don't we
Add it
have
to-
that back in,
Do we have that already?
when item 11 is tentative approval of manager's recommendation. Isn't it a part of that?
That's in there.
You want to tie it in there? Okay, we'll just tie it right in there. All right, so motion's on the floor to approve the agenda. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? None? All right, now we have the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? All right, now we move to old business, no old business, and we move to new business, the ETJ appointment of Marshall to Marshall's Planning Board. Madam Manager, would you like to?
I'm sorry, Chairman, you caught me just momentarily off guard. As you know, we do make appointments to the Marshallville Planning Board. Marshallville has, in fact, submitted a name to you, Ms. Helms, and I don't know if Ms. Helms? Yes. Ms. Helms, who they are recommending being appointed to this particular position. We did advertise this position on the county website, and there were 3 additional applications that were received. And it was determined that 2 of the 3 applicants reside within the ETJ area, Sue Helms and Jean B. Bolton. And I believe the board has copies of their applications for consideration.
All right, any motions?
Can I assume that Ms. Helms that's recommended is not the same Sue Helms?
It is. It's the same.
It's the same, okay. Okay.
Anybody? Commissioner Helms?
Consider appointment of ETJ Representative Ms. Sue Helms to the Marshville Planning Board from the applications received.
All right, we have a nomination on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay, next we have consideration of appointment, tentative approval of the manager's recommended budget. And listening to the comments from the folks tonight, and after doing some homework over the past little while, we did hear concerns from the town of Weddington. I went and I answered questions for a long time and spoke to the residents there and spoke to the town council members on the phone many times over the week. Talked to Mayor Kilgore, had very good conversations, called your town manager and talked to him, and very reasonable gentleman, very nice gentleman to deal with. And in looking at this and in discussions with all the commissioners trying to figure out the best way to do this, we all know, and many of you even agreed tonight, something's got to be fixed. There's a problem. The problem's even worse than we even knew about, because many of us didn't know that the different rates were being paid in the same fire fee districts. That one person pay $100, one person pay $10 with no reason or explanation or understanding of why. So, with that, I would like to make a motion that we direct staff to revisit the budget, keeping the current county tax rate, doing away with the 75-25 fire funding split, and go with the county-wide funding rate level. Offer the town of Weddington opportunity to be funded within the county rate, and contingent upon their approval would be the how we would do this. And then work with the city of Monroe to offset any impact that would be delivered to the residents of Monroe on a countywide rate. And at our next meeting, come back with what you have. And do you need me to read that again? Okay. Direct staff to revisit the budget, keep the current county tax rate, do away with the 75-25 split, offer the town of Weddington an opportunity to be funded with the county rate, work with the city of Monroe to offset the impact of a countywide rate. Any discussion on that motion? Commissioner Helms?
Mr. Chairman, we've had this conversation, and I appreciate your energy in trying to solve a problem. We all agree that the fire funding is a problem. I think we heard from citizens representing the majority of the citizens in the county, especially the ones that were going to get a tax increase. Your recommendation, I know you've talked to us individually. I really have no clue what you're trying to do. I think it's very appropriate, the recommendations that the 2 mayors have made and several others, that we table this and we go look at what needs to be done and include, novel idea. Let's include the community in our discussion. I really don't know what you're asking me to vote on, to be honest with you.
Okay, direct staff to revisit the budget.
I understand.
That's like tabling.
Okay.
We're putting it off for staff to come back to us. Keep the countywide tax rate that it is now. Do away with 75-25 split. There's no one part of the county don't have to pay no more than the other part of the county. Offer the town of Weddington the opportunity
I heard that.
to come into the county plan and work with the city of Monroe to offset the effect of a county plan on the taxpayers of Monroe.
Like the mayor said, why offset it when you just don't charge them?
Well, they can lower their rate just like the citizens of Weddington. See, Weddington can drop their 7.64 or 3.74 municipal fire rate, and Monroe can drop theirs by the amount of pennies that's affected by anything that raises anybody's taxes on the countywide rate.
Unfortunately, this feels like a plan drawn on the back of a napkin.
No, it's not.
We need to study it. We need to understand the ramifications. Chris, I think one of the points that were made from Mayor Kilgore is that it can have severe impact on the economic growth of this county. I've had mayors tell me that this tax, this countywide tax, the way it is, will impact their ability for taxation and programs they have within their communities. We need to understand all that. I'm sorry, I can't support it. And I respectfully disagree with you.
Even though we supported giving you more information last year and this year,
I understand.
you
but,
can't support getting more information this year.
We did not complete the task.
Well, we can still.
We did not complete the task because the four options that Mayor Kilgore and Mr. Anderson mentioned, we didn't study to see if we could actually do that, because we hadn't talked to any of our constituents, our municipalities. And I'm like Commissioner Lance Simpson that I can't vote for taking away a fire tax in the sense that the state statute says that money raised for that has to be given and used in fire service. So that's just my comments. I didn't make it as a motion, but
Any other comments, any other questions?
I have no issue, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I have no issue with directing staff to reduce the budget. However, I can't support going with the countywide rate because I think there's a better way to do it. And what is being proposed here is, especially if Weddington makes a motion to dissolve their municipal district, that is not what this board voted on, and so we could not proceed at that point. And if Monroe decided at their next council session to dissolve their municipal district, as Mr. Yates said, this county is not prepared to do anything for at least 1 year. And yet that action by the city of Monroe would reduce their tax rate by up to 20 cents and turn it over to the county. And yet we have had no discussions, and staff has had no discussions for that contingency. I don't know what's driving this either. I know there is a 75% tax rate or a 75% rate increase for our residents.
And what was proposed here?
What was proposed here is a rate increase for 75% of our residents.
So the motion is to come back with something different.
If you take out, you want to amend your motion to eliminate the countywide fire tax rate for a better alternative that incorporates no tax increase for anyone in the county and can control the tax revenue inside and maintain it for fire service.
Yeah, isn't that what I just said, keep the current county tax rate?
But you're also moving forward with the existing fire department model, which
Right.
is different because if...
No, actually it changes from a 75-25 to a full flat county tax rate controlled by the county staff.
it's still an ad valorem
and the county
tax.
commissioners.
It's going to an ad valorem tax from a fire tax.
But they got a fire tax now, it's just a different place they tax.
Well, but it's controlled by state statute because it is an actual fire tax, not an ad valorem tax that's going to be used for fire, which has no control.
Do you agree or disagree that we can set the tax rate to anything we want in those districts? This board?
I think we have the option to change those, yeah.
We
I'd
do.
be interested to know why, you're paying $100 and...
My neighbor's paying 10.
well,
Yeah, I would too.
That says our
But it doesn't
existing
matter.
system's not working.
He should pay 10. The reality is he should pay 10 because the value of his home means that under a countywide tax rate of 4.5, he'd pay $10. That's no problem. But the business, the $9.7 million business, should not pay $200.
Don't disagree
I got
with you
you.
at all.
I got you.
But we can do it a better way without this ad hoc.
Do you have a comment?
Okay. I've listened to both sides, and as you so eloquently stated, I do live in the city of Monroe. I have been inundated with phone calls from both business leaders and residents of Monroe. I have talked to folks across the county. And I take all of that under advisement, but I think the thing that causes me the most heartburn is what you've mentioned here tonight and what you've just indicated. Our system clearly doesn't work. It's broke. How in the world do we have residents in a fire tax district that don't even pay the same amount of money?
Fire fee district.
Fire fee district. How does that work? Can somebody educate me?
Go ahead.
What a mobile home is taxed at the same rate as a single-family dwelling. And you set a separate rate for mobile homes, but it's the same as a single-family dwelling. Probably what in this case, Commissioner Rushing, the one you pulled up, there's a $10 minimum for unimproved land. So if the tax office is not aware that there is a mobile home on that site, or if it was specially put there and there was no notice given to that effect, that would be the only way that it would be $10, would be that if it was unimproved land at the minimum size of that. If we know that it's a mobile home and we are aware of that it'll be taxed as a dwelling in that tax district. Now, there are differences across the 12 fire fees. There's differences across the fee districts. But as far as there's not a provision to tax a mobile home at one rate in one place and a different rate in another. So probably more than likely that specific case, you happen to find one that they may have put it out there recently or it may have been out there for a while. We don't touch every property every year. So
I'm gonna disagree with you. I checked 2 mobile homes in my district, and both mobile homes paid $10. One's been there probably 30 years. The other's been there almost 15. So they've been there many years. The sheriff's department's aware of them. The school buses pass by them. They're there, but there's no rhyme or reason. And in Unionville, the same thing. The one's been there for, I checked more than one in each district, and it seems some districts charge $10, some districts charge what everybody else pays. But there's no rhyme or reason to it.
If you'll give us those addresses, we'll be happy to look into them.
I'll be popular tomorrow.
Okay, so how do we exclude Monroe and Weddington?
We can't legally.
I'm asking, Jeff.
Not
Financially, how can we do that?
the only way that you can do it without having a donut hole fire district would be to give them back through contribution and local agreement back to their locality. So the level to which you decide to do that is up to you as a board. Just keep in mind, for every dollar, it's a dollar for dollar increase. So for every dollar you add to that equation, you're going to add to the countywide tax rate.
Okay, and if we did that, what's the countywide tax rate go to?
If you were to go to the countywide tax rate, I haven't calculated it with Monroe in there, but I have with Weddington. It's going to be right around 5.4 cents, give or take. And then if you add, let's say you give Monroe $1.5 million back, that's a little more than half a penny. So you're looking at somewhere on the order of 6 cents. If you go with the recommended funding, the capital and everything as it's recommended by the manager and requested by the fire departments.
Gentlemen, I'm going to have to side with Commissioner Helms and Commissioner Simpson on this. I don't know that we've done everything we need to do. I think there's just too many unanswered questions at this point. You know, we've got discrepancy in fire districts with people paying different amounts of money, and I don't know that I can support what you want to do at this point.
So now the motion is to direct staff to go and get that information and come back to us and make another recommendation at a later date. The motion's not to approve the plan that was presented by staff. The motion is to go do homework and come back and present something to us at the next meeting. Would you be in favor of that?
Yeah, as long as we're not
setting anything in stone.
Tonight,
That's right.
I'm not comfortable doing that.
That's right. That's right. Commissioner.
Make a friendly amendment to your motion that when you say go back clearly staff needs to revisit, but to table this option has been recommended by most here.
Yeah, we can table that option. That's kind of what we're doing in a way, but yeah, do we need to do that in the motion, table the option currently presented and go to,
It was already voted on one of the options.
right,
You can always reverse your decision.
right. So we're directing staff before we give her tentative approval of her budget, because this plan was already approved by 3-2 vote. So what
Isn't
we're,
that what you're saying? It's already been approved, so we have to reverse that?
no, we have to, what we're saying is we're not giving her tentative approval of her budget until she comes back and gives us this information. Right? Is that how you take it?
I'm somewhat confused. The board has already approved a funding methodology, which the board can always change. It's tied up into the manager's approval of the manager's budget this evening because that's
She's asking for tentative approval.
Right. So the board can do what they please. I'm not clear on your motion.
He's wanting, he was saying, do we need to table it? But we've already voted on it, so there's no way to table something we've already approved. So what we're doing is we're not giving the manager tentative approval of her budget. Instead, we're directing staff to go back and get more information and do the homework that's been mentioned here tonight, and work with the city of Weddington and the city of Monroe to find some solutions, and then come back with a recommendation at the next meeting.
Procedurally, that's correct, Commissioner Rushing. I'm still a little unclear as to the motion, your motion, because it's changed a little bit as it's been repeated.
Okay, direct staff to revisit the budget, to not give tentative approval. Keep the current county tax rate, and they're looking at this, to how to keep the current county tax rate, what cuts need to be made.
That's where I'm having trouble, is the current county tax rate, those rates are siloed, so there is a county tax rate, a fire rate, and
Right.
other rates as well.
All combined, the combined county part excluding schools. Does that make better sense? All the county, fire, EMS, and county. All for the town of Weddington. Oh, do away with the 75-25 split. So we don't have anybody paying extra for the services, because they're already paying their part to get the extra level of service. And then we offer the town of Weddington the opportunity to be funded with the county rate, and they can take that up at their next meeting. And then we work with the city of Monroe to offset the impact of a countywide rate.
Can I ask for clarification?
Okay?
Considering,
I was going to, but go ahead.
when you're saying the countywide tax rate, are you ignoring the fire fee impact?
We're ignoring the fire fee impact right now.
Okay, because here's the challenge.
What's your challenge?
Well, you have $12 million
Yeah.
sitting out there. That's not,
Right.
we're going to need a couple of work sessions, and the manager has to deliver to you
Yeah.
a budget within about 8 business days.
Right.
So if that's the choice,
We need to do a work
absolutely
session.
within your purview, you as a board, $12 million doesn't come easy. So we're gonna need to go back into work session and with you as a board to hear from you where you want to take $12 million out of the organization, because
You like that?
that's about a 10% cut when you start looking, and that's a 10% cut including sheriff and human services, because you can't cut debt service.
Right.
So if that's what you as a board are directing, I don't think in 8 days that we can put together a plan that cuts $12 million out of county operations.
But the difference is only $3 million from last year's funding, correct?
You know, the difference is, you said no fire fee. So the difference is in the fire fee, you're saying that's not your words. You said that doesn't count, it's all a tax increase. So to change the fire fee over to a tax, it's a conversion, and that is additional pennies, while there is a corresponding fee reduction. So in the version you're talking about, the people that pay the fire fee will have 0 fire fee and no rate increase. So what I'm asking you is, we need to you're gonna need to do work sessions to get there, because there's not a clean way to get to that level of cut that I think that the manager, and I don't mean to speak for you, Cindy, but
You are, though. It's okay.
having been through this budget and been through it with a fine-tooth comb, there's not $12 million to be had there without significant material cuts to your other service areas. And if that's what you want to do, then we need to have extended conversation about that in work session.
Agree with that? We need to have a work session and discuss it.
Oh, I agree. I'd like to understand, $13 million, a lot of that is the inflated part of the decision staff has made to give away trucks instead of fund some request for truck payments. If we went back, stayed way we are right now, what would it cost us?
The impact of the additional capital funding.
Okay, no, I just said exclude all the trucks you're giving away.
If you exclude the cash funding of capital and you went with what they requested, we have already cut about $4 million out of that equation. So if you were to go back to that, there is more than what was recommended at that level in the budget. So that's what I'm telling, that's what I was speaking to earlier, is there's about 1.15 million of additional staffing that the fire departments have asked for and is recommended. So in your tax districts, most of the tax districts, with the exception of Springs, even if you went with the current funding model of fees and tax districts, could not support their expenditures at their current tax rate. So Stallings, Hemby Bridge, Wesley Chapel, and Waxhaw will all need, even if you exclude capital from the equation, will all need tax increases to support the additional funding necessary for personnel. So really the only way to keep that fire cost down is if you were to freeze it again while you tried to settle this issue and kept it as is. Otherwise, you're looking at going back to the general fund for $12 million, somewhere between, if we adjust the capital out, somewhere between $10 and $12 million, which is, again, 10% of your non-debt component. So that's the challenge, and I think, given 8 days to try to solve that problem, puts everybody in a...
When is the budget approval due?
I have to submit the budget to you no later than June 1st.
When do we have to approve it?
You have to approve it by June 30th.
So we got 30 days after June 1st.
But I have to give you a recommendation by June 1st.
Okay.
My concern is that even if you take out the capital component, you are looking at $10 million to keep the tax rate the same across the board.
What they're saying too is that, like, when you have if you have the current rate and the fire fee, like I said, that guy that's paying the $1.07 tax rate, that if you take his fire fee out of the equation and pay for what he's already paying and what he would pay under the 4, 5, or 5 or whatever it would be, you're losing more money. So you're taking away money that they're already there.
But what does the current taxing methodology, fire fee and fire districts, it nets a major portion of that $10 million.
If I might, Commissioner, we actually anticipated this question because we thought we might end up here this evening. When we looked at what would it take if you were to go with the recommendations that were, let me see, the one without cash capital. Okay. If we were to go with the funding that the majority of the departments requested, some of them wanted to pay it over a 10-year period of time, etc. With the additional staffing that was requested and recommended, that for those districts that aren't already at a $100 fire fee, all of them will go up to, one will go up to, Fairview will go up to, actually they get a little bit of a reduction, but Jackson goes up to 80.88 cents, which is a 17.54 cent increase. Dollars, sorry. Then in your tax districts, Hemby Bridge goes up, Springs, I'm sorry, I'm just looking. I think every one of your tax districts go up as well. So there is not a scenario within the manager's recommended budget right now with the fire departments, even readdressing the capital component, that within the fire fee districts, with the countywide rate, and with the tax districts, that those will not go up.
Tell me, how much would, Henry Bridge, chief sitting here, how much is his going up?
Hemby Bridge goes from $5.57. Excuse me, is it 5.57 or is it 5.6?
Plus the county-wide on top of that is where the 574 comes from. 512 this year.
We never do things on the fly real well around here.
Well, that's a good reason we need to stop,
If you were to
figure
fund
this thing out and do it right.
if you were to go with your kind of current structure and to allow the not cash fund capital in the fire tax districts, but fund the capital in the other areas, you're looking at about 6.47. So it'd be about a 0.9 county-wide rate. So about half a penny, you pick up about a little less than half a penny countywide to cover the capital and the additional staffing. And then with their additional staffing and giving them back their fund balance, you're looking at about 6.47 in Hemby Bridge. And part of that's driven by about $155,000 worth of additional staffing that is coming into Hemby Bridge.
Stallings goes up to over 7 cents. Waxhaw goes up to over 6 cents. Wesley Chapel goes to 3.96 cents. So even under that scenario, those residents will see an increase.
How does Wesley Chapel go to 3.96 cents? Because their contribution in 16 was $1.3 million, and their recommended budget, what I pulled off, was $1,692,000, and at a little over $500,000 per penny. That's a significant jump.
Their operating appropriations is 1.838. Their capital appropriation is $256,000.
The difference in Wesley Chapel is the additional half penny countywide. That's
It's actually 0.9.
right. The 0.9. Well, it's on top of the 4.8.
So to get the subsidies next year, we're going to a 0.9 instead of.
That is, not knowing where the board was going to go with this discussion, we tried to look at if the board wanted to, has been stated by some, to table this matter for another year and to stay with the existing funding model. What would that look like based upon the manager's recommended budget with staffing and capital, as well as the manager's recommended budget with respect to staffing and the capital component to be financed versus cash funded? Applying their sales tax in the tax districts as they've received in the past, applying their fund balance as we have received in the past, but there still is a subsidy. The 0.0048 that is right now goes to a little under penny, 0.009.
So we
To fully fund that component if you were to do it under a fire model.
So Mayor Kilgore would be paying about a penny under the current system instead of half a penny that we're paying now in Monroe. So you'd be paying a penny. Next year you'd get a bill that would say a penny anyways, not 4 or 5, but it would still be a penny almost that you'd be paying with your tax bill next year. And so would Weddington.
And the issue is, and I'm certainly not trying to get in the policy aspect of this, that is up to this commission as to what they choose to do. The issue is that if that's the direction you want to go in, that's the direction that staff will proceed in. However, it still keeps your fire fees in place, it still keeps your taxing districts in place, and it does not address the equity. So I think it's, since we've dealt with this for a couple years, it does not resolve the problem, but it does give you additional time to evaluate this if that is in fact what the board wishes to do.
Mr. Chairman, I think you very eloquently pointed out that we have funds that we can find in our budget that are, I would say, maybe excess. that would easily absorb that extra half a penny. And right now, you're paying .48, and I think our conversation was, what a big deal was it? 4.45 is a different story.
But if we're going to do that, why don't we fix it?
I think we need to fix it, but I don't think we can fix it in 8 days.
Let me ask the whole board, and just, Jerry and I spent about 4 months on this, and then the rest of the year. I'm more comfortable with some of the things that we've talked about legally because of spending all that time doing it. The fact that we can't create a countywide district without some input from the towns, and we can't donut hole Monroe, we can't donut hole Weddington. These are all things that we heard over those meetings that we had with the stakeholder committee. These are things that you guys need to hear from legal staff and from the other things that we heard in those meetings, that that's some of where the disagreements come, because how do we do this, and why can we not do one thing when we can do another thing? So I would ask, if you want to scratch a piece of this, if you want to scratch to keep the current county tax rate, because maybe we have to go, if you're in Wesley Chapel and you pay 80 cents this year and you pay 80 cents next year, if you're a citizen of Monroe and you pay 76 cents this year and you pay 76 cents next year, whatever you're paying, as long as you're paying the same thing this next year as you are this year, that's kind of what we're looking at, right? Wanting to make sure that nobody's having increased taxes. Then let's look at that and have them come back and have a work session and have them explain the legal issues to you, to the whole board. Because some of the issues are, is I've been talking with them because I understand the questions they ask. We need to do a work session and before we make any decisions on this. So part of this is directing staff to come back. Maybe we scratch this, keep the current county tax rate of 28 cents and the fire, whatever. You come back and do the best you can. You come back and tell us the best you can do. And let us look at it. Let us help make those decisions. Can you agree to that? To have them come back and let's have a work session and figure this out?
But we're not giving tentative approval to the members.
No, we're not giving tentative approval tonight. No, that's not what we're doing.
The number that Mr. Yates mentioned, the .9, is what I discussed earlier about year one of the 5-year plan to transition. That comes out to 966,000, rough numbers. I know you've got the exact number. I'm using 2.3 million per penny. It may come out to $1 million. Well, if you're talking about finding the funding to give Monroe back 1.4 million, to me, it's easier to go back to the county and find a way to save $1 million versus trying to find a way to give Monroe back 1.4 million and have to do Weddington. And this keeps everybody's rate. So we're really looking at a savings out of the budget of $1 million. And that gets us to the .9 countywide subsidy, provides the funding for the fire departments, correct?
Yeah, but you're still missing the equity component of it. That you have a building that's not $10 million on one side of the county paying $200 and
I get it.
$4,000 on the other side.
But we can get there. And
Yeah.
the issue that I have is, while there is an equity piece, you're also taking, and 25% of the county is going to get a tax decrease, and 75% is going to get a tax increase. And you were quick to point out that Commissioner Akmus is going to pay more under this plan. Will you pay more or less?
I will pay $65 instead of $100.
Will you get better fire service?
No, I'll get the same fire service I have right now.
The budget goes up.
Budget goes up. That's just to recover. That's just to replace the volunteers that's not there.
Better service.
But my dad's business is go way
understand.
up. He pays more taxes than you and me combined, and his will
You
go way up.
personally will benefit from this, correct?
Yes, I will. And I said that in the stakeholders meeting.
And what I'm trying.
But there's no plan presented that I didn't benefit from an equity plan. The chief's plan,
I want to do it over a course
my
of
plan,
time.
everybody's plan.
For me, 0.9% is something that we can work our way into.
Johnny, how many years has this been talked about? No, how many total years? Huh? This is the end of the 5-year process.
That a little bit, John.
This is the end of that 5-year process. It really have been talking about this a long time. When I was on the board a long time ago, we had these same kind of conversations type, and what should we do? How could we do it? Jerry's had these conversations for years, and it's, when we talk about not doing the homework, and I appreciate, like I said, that rushing thing, that's not the first time it's been used on me. I've done a lot of work on this for the last year, a lot of homework. Whether you believe it or not, you can ask staff. I've challenged them on many different levels. I've talked with Johnny, I've talked with Steve, talked with the mayors, talked with Mayor Kilgore the other day, talked to Chief Fowler when we're doing the meetings and stuff, and tried to understand what could everybody get out of this? What can we all benefit from in this plan? And if we stay with the same thing, there's only one you can do with the inadequacies, or we can vote to give one side of the county a 20-cent increase and the other side of the county a 3-cent fire tax. So these are the things that we looked at. One person blows it all to smithereens. So if you get 3 county commissioners get up here and do something completely different, we need something sustainable. We need something fair and equitable. And if we don't do it this time, if we don't make a good decision, if we don't figure something out, it's going to change, and it'll change, and it'll change. So let's do something fair to everybody, an equal rate. The ones that can get away from their municipal district, like Weddington, without much trouble, let them do it. Monroe wants that 4 rating, and they've earned that 4 rating, they deserve that 4 rating, and we don't want to do anything to take it away from them. But we can help provide. Huh?
Monroe has a 3 rating.
You have a 3 rating? Sorry, even better. And you benefit with your insurance because of that 3 rating. I've got a 9. I've got a 9 rating, and the goal of the committee was not to drop below the rating that you have. Mine's that, huh? Right, I got you. So like Wesley Chapel with your rating at 6, they get a better insurance rating than I get with my 9. I'm not looking for a better insurance rating. I pay more in insurance. I'm not asking for a better insurance rating. I just want somebody to drag me or my kids out of the car if something happens. And if they're not, if the volunteers are not there, you'll be there sooner or later. I appreciate it. But what I'm asking for is let's do exactly what we've been asked to do tonight. Let's go back, direct staff to come back with some alternatives, some plans to revisit the budget, find out where we can make cuts, because you and I both have talked about cuts today. Just like this sales tax thing at $3 million, it can be used for SBCC, it can be used for economic development. Let's use it for that. Let's use maybe we can offset some of the capital costs that we need. But let's go and look at this again. Give the manager better direction as a board, and come back and do this. And I've been very respectful. Last year when you said let's table this for a year, I was very respectful of you, even though I was ready to vote for this last year. Firefighters told y'all the same thing, right? But we've tabled it and had a lot of meetings to educate ourselves on this. And Jerry Simpson and I don't think we missed any meetings. Did we miss one of those meetings?
Stakeholders?
Did I or you miss one? And we educated ourselves. And we felt comfortable enough to vote for option 2 the other day as the best of the options that we had. But when you come back and say, let's look at option 5, that opened the door. And so we started doing more research. And through discussions with every one of you, I've said there's a better way to do this, and we can figure it out. But we do need to figure it out. We don't need to keep putting it off and putting it off, because it only gets harder the longer you put it off. This is a hard decision to make. Look, all these folks here tonight, I mean, some of y'all were here last year, and we put it off. Some of y'all were here year 4 probably, they put it off then, and the year before, and the year before. It's time we get serious about this.
There are just too many questions. I mean,
well, let's get them answered.
The point that you asked about between the $100 and the $10, I think that's important. And the one person that I have not heard from that I think is paramount for this discussion is Mr. Pate. The impact of this tax increase on Monroe and the economic development of the county, I think, is critical. And we have not heard from that. And we have not had discussions, and staff has not had one-on-one discussions with the municipalities. And I would ask, as part of this, that the municipalities are involved in it so they understand the impact on their own residents.
Okay.
I had the mayor Waxaw tell me that it's going to have a negative impact on their ability to do their budget this year.
Right, but if it was a additional 4.5 cents on the tax rate that was not offset anywhere else. A lot of people believe, a lot of towns believe that we're going to charge them 4.5 cents in addition to what they're already paying. That's not right. Did anybody believe that? Raise your hand. I've heard it. Yeah, we're going to charge another, we're already paying 4 cents or 5 cents, you're going to pay us another 4.5 cents. The only people are Weddington and Monroe that would happen to, but if we offset that, then you don't pay it. Well, we can't. It's the legal part of it.
But to me, it's easier to offset the 0.42.
My argument.
To go to a 0.9 than the 4.45.
My argument.
Sure Jeff would have a better time adjusting the 0.9 rate.
My option was to go to was not to go to 4.5, it was to go to 2, but it got voted, it was the third most popular choice, and that was to help you and you. Any further discussion on this?
So what if we just freeze it at last year's levels, everything? Huh?
I think there's some inherent issues with funding, but, from that perspective, if your aim is to keep the rate the same, you will achieve that goal. There's not many other goals you achieve in doing that. You buy yourself another year of discussion. I'm not sure if there's many more ways to skin this cat that aren't all just shades of gray on the same way. So we can, it's the board's pleasure if that's your direction. The manager's budget is balanced, so we will need another work session if you go to trying to take that out of the operations side of the house and the general fund, trying to balance the tax increase on the other side. So it's up to you as a board where you'd like to go.
And if I might, Commissioner, and some of the chiefs in the audience may faint when I say this, but I think there's a pent-up demand that we are looking at right now when you see the increase from last year's budget to this year's budget, because we froze them last year so that we could study this issue, which we did through the stakeholders meeting. I think for some of the departments, I won't say all across the board, but for some of the departments, that it could create some issues and concerns about their ability to effectively provide services without some of the additional staffing that has been requested. That is just, if our role is to protect the public, then I have concerns if we were to do that.
We had that situation last year, and I think we addressed those with some kind of, I guess I'd call it emergency actions.
We did, but last year it was very specific that we had a few departments that were on probation. And so we took certain actions for those departments because we didn't want them to put them in any more of a dire situation. I just received a report from the state probably last week, and all of our departments at this point in time, as of I think it was mid-April, have met the state requirements.
And I commend you for taking those actions to make sure they were taken care of. But
So I would say, if it's part of your motion, however we need to amend it, is to direct staff to go back. If we keep the current rate or current model, that we at least incorporate some way to get from point A to point B, whether it's over a few years, but just to not have a tax increase, but we put something in place if it's possible. But in my view, if we're asking staff to do that as well, I would ask the fire departments to go back and look at your budgets again and see if there's additional ways that you can cut without freezing you, see what needs to be done, so we can minimize from 0.48 to 0.9. Maybe there's some give in there that we can make work, so that we're not freezing, we're providing the support that the fire departments need, but it provides less stress on the county, I guess, to try and find that additional $1 million savings. Maybe it's only $750,000 or $500,000.
So you're comfortable with the work session?
Another work session, yes.
Motion would be then to direct staff to have another work session. Explain to us the legalities. Be ready to explain to all the commissioners the legalities in this, what we can and can't do.
I don't think it's a legal issue at this point. I'm glad to answer any legal questions you have about any fire issue at any time.
Can we create a fire tax district countywide without input from all 14 municipalities?
No.
Okay. Can we donut hole 2 municipalities and make everybody else pay a fire tax?
You cannot,
Okay.
except with working through the process.
Unless we get approval from the other
I'm not saying that's
13 municipalities.
impossible. I'm just saying there's a process to work through, whereby you have to do municipal consent, and you have to look at other districts and see if there's infringement over those districts as well. It may be doable if that's the board's desire, but it would not be a quick process.
Okay.
but that
So we have
process
another
hasn't
work
been done,
session?
right?
So we have another work session to talk about this, right?
Can we hear from the manager? She's
I just-
wanting to say something.
I'm sorry, but I'm hyperventilating just a little bit because I have 8 days to give you a budget, which I am required to do by state statute. So I need some direction.
And that is also has to include schools.
Yes. So we're also dealing with the schools issue at the same time we're also dealing with the fire fund issue. So we don't have a whole lot of time on our hands, respectfully. So I need some very specific direction this evening as to what do you want us to do about the fire funding so that it can be embedded in the budget that we present to you. And I'm sorry, Chairman, but doing another work session at this point in time, I don't know how we do that and get a budget to you in 8 days unless the direction is something very close to what we presently have in place.
I think she just answered her question.
Yeah, we're up against the wall, like we were last year.
So
And do we take that for an answer, or do we direct her to?
doesn't mean we should jump off the cliff just because we're
So
getting close.
do we direct her to come back and tell us more options? Or what do we do?
I don't see how she's gonna be able to do it in 8 days. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes trying to do that. So that's why I think we need to
So just stick with the fire fees and the fire
stick with the
tax
fire
district
fees right now and.
for the next year, right?
I'm
One more
sorry,
year,
but
one more
we
year.
we need to come up with a sustainable plan that is acceptable to our municipalities and works with our fire departments.
I don't want to go through this next year.
We will.
And I know
We
this
will
is-
not.
This is
No,
the
I
second
mean-
fire drill that Sydney's been through.
You gonna go through this next year, Jerry?
What I would like to
Whatever it
see.
takes. That's what they elected me to do.
That's right.
What I would like to see is we move forward with the model that's currently in place. We look at the .9 rate and see if there's an additional savings from the county and the volunteer fire departments that don't jeopardize staffing or capital issues. And sometime before December, staff comes up with a plan, gives them time to work with the municipalities to come up with a long-term option that answers some of our concerns. I think the issue I have with the stakeholder meeting is municipalities weren't,
Over there.
well, but not as part of this piece. When we got to option 2, we should have had some discussions before that point. Does that make your budget prep easier? Not easy, but easier.
Then do a work sessions and do it in 2 days.
I'm going to defer to the manager because she's the one that telling me she doesn't want to do.
Obviously, I will do whatever I'm directed to do.
I'll tell you what, I'm gonna call a recess. And we're gonna, Johnny wants a recess, so we're gonna need to go. I don't mean to keep y'all this long. Last time I didn't call a recess and everybody had to go to the potty. So let's take a recess.
How long is this?
15 minutes. We start back at 10 a.m., 10 p.m. Okay, where we left off. We left off with there's a motion on the floor. And from what the county staff is telling me, they can't do this. County commissioners still have concerns. If we're going to, still the motion stands the same, but the time limit may change. I'll amend the motion that we give this another year. Direct staff to visit all the towns and get input from the towns. Make a decision over the next year what we're going to do. And everything stays the same. Is everybody comfortable with the manager's budget with fire services to be relooked at in the next, week or so? You need a decision on that? We need to do a work session to come back and decide what we're going to do with fire services independent from the rest of the budget?
I think there was some of the items in the budget that we probably need to have some further discussion on.
So-
We talked about that. You were talking about being able to cut some of the expenses out of the budget, and I think we need to continue that. Maybe a work session would be the best place to do that.
Well, we don't have time for a work session, is what I heard, right?
If you will table, if you will withdraw your motion, we can table the item on the agenda to give staff time to go through and work out the numbers again. and bring it back. They already know the expectation, I believe. Unless, Manager, I'm wrong.
I'm going to seek some clarification as soon as we reach a
So if you'll withdraw your
consensus
motion,
here.
we can get the clarification per and just table the agenda item until staff comes back with the changes.
Okay, but what I'm understanding is you want direction tonight on your budget.
I would like, you have until June 30th to approve a budget. You at any point prior to June 30th can amend the budget. It is always my objective as a manager, as long as I've been a manager, to try and submit a budget that I believe meets the objectives of the Board of County Commissioners as well as what I think is appropriate for the organization. If in fact there are very specific adjustments you want made to this budget, then it would be helpful to hear them this evening. If the board is not prepared to do that this evening, then we can certainly do a work session, but you're going to have to do it almost immediately in order for us to make those adjustments. As it relates to fire funding, right now we have a hole. Well, actually we don't, because there hasn't been a motion made. But once a motion is made on whatever it is on fire funding, what we have in the recommended budget does not appear to be any longer what this board's direction is going to be. So we would need direction on that as to exactly what it is that you expect us to come back with, even in a work session format. So we have 8 days in which to get direction from you all, to conduct a work session, to finalize it and get it to you. That is the concern that I've expressed. That doesn't mean you can't amend the budget after June 1. I just have, by state statute, I am required to deliver it to you no later than June 1.
Will you withdraw your motion so we can make a motion that will meet the manager's needs to direct staff on what we need?
Well, okay. Do a friendly amendment. If you want to, I've got a motion to direct staff to come back with something.
My friendly amendment is to withdraw the motion.
Okay, I'll withdraw the motion and direct staff to schedule a work session.
Well,
She said she needs the information on the work stuff. This is Commissioner Jerry Simpson.
Have you withdrawn your motion?
Yes.
So that motion's not on the table? Thank you. I have a greater respect for Chairman Rushing after this evening. He poured his heart out on this issue, and he's worked long and hard to make it work. And we've heard over the past year all these misinformation and information and ideas that weren't true or weren't correct or weren't totally correct about why we were trying to do this as a board. And he and I worked long and hard on that stakeholders committee in an effort to do one thing: provide the best darn fire service across this county that we possibly could at the least possible cost to the taxpayer. That's been my one desire. So I have tremendous respect for you, Chairman Rushing. Much more tonight. I've had plenty of respect for you, but much more tonight after your efforts. Having said that, I respect Mayor Kilgore and the councilman from Monroe. And I respect Mayor Dieter from Weddington and the citizens of Weddington. And I respect Butch Plyler. And I respect Butch Plyler like I respect Johnny Bly and the Fire Chiefs Association and Don Getty and all those guys that are sitting back there and have been sitting back there because they've invested a lifetime in fire service and answering that call in the middle of the night. There's been several comments about we were trying to rush this through and trying to get it over with. I started talking about this issue in 2010, the first year I was elected. because I saw the problems with the way it was being done, the problems with the fire fees, and it was an inequitable system. And I tried many times, as chairman with the manager, we talked about it to try to fix it, and it went many different directions. It got swept under the rug. It was sent to the fire commission, and they had study committees, and we're supposed to work on it, study it over time. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited. And we brought it up on last year's agenda with a solution, a funding solution, and it was postponed. Study it for a year. And stakeholders met every 2 weeks for 4 and 5 months, and we talked about it, and we talked about it, and here we are again without an answer, trying to do the right thing. I said this before, and I'll say it again. The purpose, or my belief in government, is that we as leaders do no harm, that we do our best to do no harm. And one of the things that came up in the stakeholders committee, and we talked about it back and forth, and we brought it up, is the idea of the contract. We said in the stakeholders committee, tell us what you want and we'll tell you what it costs. And that's what the contract does. It describes and defines what our expectations are in terms of fire service, and then the fire departments are going to tell us what it's going to cost for them to provide that. We don't have that contract yet. We're working on it. So, I would submit a motion that we maintain fire funding at last year's level, with the exception of allowing the manager to survey the VFDs for capital savings, and also to identify any emergency needs that must be met. That will give us a year to put together whatever kind of summit, stakeholders committee, work sessions with bringing in the municipalities. However, we believe it's best to eat this elephant one more time.
All right, motion's on the floor. Any discussion on the motion?
Would you consider an amendment to include personnel costs on fire departments that the county manager and staff believes need additional personnel as part of the budget discussion?
I certainly would entertain that. I believe I addressed that as with respect to her identifying any emergency needs or necessities that must be covered. What I don't want to do is hold any fire department in limbo because they're the one that really needs something. Otherwise, let's just hold off on funding everything else till we get an answer as to how.
Any other? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say that's my motion.
Any other discussion on that motion? I would have one question to say, and in that purchasing, like if we have any emergency equipment that has to be purchased, that would then belong to that fire district, and it would not help the county if that fire district goes under, that equipment belongs to that fire district, and we won't see any, the taxpayers of the county, even though we may help pay for it, won't see any benefit, right?
Well, I'm going to say that that's the contract on which we operate at this point in time, and unless our attorney tells me differently, that is the premise under which any equipment would be acquired.
I think I'm the chairman, so I can do whatever I want, pretty much. So, Johnny, would you come up here for just 1 second and answer a question? John, you're on the Johnny Blythe, chief of Henry Bridge, and also the president of Fire Chiefs Association. Tell what all you are.
Fire Chiefs Association.
And anything else, the Fire Commission?
Fire Commission.
Okay. So you know what you're talking about, right?
Supposedly.
Johnny, we need a contract.
Okay.
I know you've been in negotiations, and y'all have an attorney working with our attorney. We got to build in some protections for the taxpayers.
Okay,
Can we get that done?
we're in discussions right now.
Can we get it done?
I'm sure we can.
Because there's a lot of little fire departments that are represented here too that need some of this help that we're out offering. And one thing I've heard from Commissioner Helms and Commissioner Simpson is that we need to contract. We've taken a big step. You had 3 votes already to do what we did. It's done. But we're taking a big step back, and we're putting a lot of faith on the fire departments now. We need to contract.
All right.
All right? Fire chiefs that are in here, you realize what we've done, right? You realize we're doing everything again this year to work with you. We need a contract. Work with us. Work with our staff. We hear things about, in the community, oh, the staff's trying to do this, staff's trying to do that. I can tell you from my discussion with the county manager, she don't want to take over fire service. She don't want to put out fires. If she is, she'll be a firewoman. We need y'all to do it. You know how to do it. You know how to buy your equipment. Show it to us in this contract. Give the protections for the taxpayers, and let's move on. Anybody disagree with that? All right, motion's on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. 5-0 vote with all that grumbling, right? All right. Now we need tentative approval of the county manager's budget.
Okay, I'm going to look at Jeff Crook for just a moment. I don't know, can they adopt the tentative budget as amended?
It's just a tentative approval, subject to modification.
Okay.
Is there any major modifications anybody wants to let the manager know about as we're doing this? Any places you want looked at before we do this? Let's make a motion. Anybody want to make the motion to approve the manager's tentative budget? Or give tentative approval for the manager's budget, right?
As modified, right?
As modified. Anybody want to make that
Yes, I'll
motion?
make that motion. Provide tentative approval of the manager's recommended budget as modified.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Now's the time to give her any direction that you want her to do in the next 8 days that she has. I would like to get that option with the sales tax looked at. If we get $3 million more in sales tax that we can use to help SBCC, what the effect is, what the effect of using that to help SBCC, and what the effect of helping economic development, Christmas Day, what the effect of that is on the tax rate.
Can you, point of clarification?
Okay?
Just, the funding, the sales tax funding that came in was assigned to schools' debt.
Mhm.
The budget is balanced
Right.
as it sits.
Right.
So there's not an additional $3 million sitting anywhere to be reallocated. So if you move it off of debt
Mhm.
to, let's say the SBCC, which is getting about $1.8 million in capital and over $1 million in operating assistance, then that's going to create a hole where the debt funding was. So do you want, so I guess I'm a little confused from that direction is.
Well, if we
it's
wasn't,
not an
if we
addition-
wasn't
it's not-
planning,
it's
if
not
we
an
wasn't
additional-
planning on getting it and we got it, and you're gonna spend $3 million from somewhere else, what's the effect of that? Is there a effect on the rate one way or the other? What we have, this is some of the things that we've had in discussions amongst ourselves, like the $2.4 million in software, we just pay it, there's a lot of concerns that I have in that we just buy tax software, because some of the chiefs, one of their arguments were buying this capital equipment when they could buy it better in a different way. I just want to make sure that we know that we're buying it the right way.
We've done a procurement process, so they're in review that John and his group are going to recommend to you
Okay.
the best package, but that's a one-time funding source.
Mhm.
So I think that the challenge you have is the balance in it being, the budget and it being balanced is if you were to reallocate that $3 million in sales tax, you have two choices at that point. Find $3 million somewhere else to take out, or a penny or a little bit, a penny and a third to make up the difference that would be lost from that $3 million. It's not found money at this point. It's been allocated and it's been used for.
In your tentative budget.
In the tentative budget, so
Right.
things like the sheriff's pay increases, staffing for human services, for tax, it's all over
Right.
the budget. It's not in a single place where we're holding it.
Anybody interested in cutting taxes this year?
Absolutely.
Anybody interested in cutting taxes this year? Any ideas on where you want to, she's gonna come back in 8 days we're giving her tentative approval for this. So,
I sent an email about a week ago asking to the manager and the board, asking to have a work session on emergency services. I think there's some opportunities there. I haven't heard anything back from that request, but I think I'd like to see an opportunity to look at some savings there.
anybody, any other?
Did you want me to respond?
No.
Okay.
Just when you get ready to come, you're giving your, the 8 days that you got left. Don't want to surprise you later on.
I'll be glad to sit down with you personally and discuss it.
Okay.
All right.
And I would like to look at the other areas. I mean, just going through here, it looks like there's 18 additional personnel, not including sheriffs and the Health and Human Services. To see, look at the rationale. See, for example, general administrative is up 50% since 2012 from a personnel standpoint. Is that really needed given the population growth? And then also look at some of the other areas. I'd like just some clarification on the 10, I believe it's 10 income maintenance workers that are in general administrative, and why they're not in Health and Human Services.
Those are the 10, that question I can answer if you'll allow me just a moment. The department originally requested 20 to meet some of the mandates we have in meeting our timeliness requirements on FNS, and then soon it will be, which is food stamps, and soon we're going to be running the same issues with respect to Medicaid. What we said was we think there may be some process improvements that we can do, so we allocated 10, and then we put 10 in a general account under general administration that we only funded for 6 months. So if in fact we make the determination in November or December, we have been able to find those efficiencies through additional training, et cetera, we don't need those 10 staff members, then that will go away and they will not be added. So that is why they were not allocated to the department. They were allocated in that area. But I'm more than happy to sit down and meet with you and talk about the other positions.
Okay. And then I had one other question. What is the $500,000 contingency fund?
The $500,000 contingency, what that allows for is unexpected expenses through the year at the board's direction. So in the past, that was, for instance, we used it 1 year for HealthQuest when they came and had HVAC and computer repairs that they had to have. That came out of the contingency. So it's kind of it's a place for the board's discretionary. It's discretionary to the board because the manager can't spend it without your approval. It's where we go when we don't, when things come up through the year that we're not aware of. So
okay.
Comparatively, it's a small contingency. Usually I have them in 1 to 2%.
But it does require board authorization for any money to be expended from that account.
And for clarification on those positions that are in the general county government, and the budget ordinance as it sits today requires your approval to put those back, to move those over to human services. That the manager can't make that decision independently based on, I think Mr. Helms made that suggestion during our work session. So we wrote that into the budget ordinance such that those positions can't be released to human services without the board's approval at that time.
And the increase in the commissioner's budget?
The increase in the commissioner's budget is, there's a couple of factors going on there. I think part of it's the reallocation, being sure we have the allocation between the manager's office and the commission's office of their staffing. There's some legal fees and some other things that are in there based on the last couple of years and what we've seen in legal costs.
But we can give you a breakdown on that as well.
If you would look at those, please. Those are some
Sure.
things I noticed offhand that maybe we can get another $1 million in savings. Thank you.
You're always very optimistic.
You can do it. Just say yes.
All right. Motion's on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. All right. Next, we have appointment to, let's see. We have the number 12, Consolidation Human Services Board appointments.
I'm sorry, Chairman, I was busy making notes. Yes, you have 3 individuals that are presently serving on the Consolidated Human Services Board, and their terms have expired. I know that Ms. Pritt, Ms. Lance, and Ms. Baker have applied for reappointment, and I believe on the January 11th meeting, the Consolidated Human Services Board reviewed the applications for Ms. Pritt and Ms. Lance, and a motion was made for them to be reappointed. And I think the positions are noted in your agenda package. And then on the May 9th meeting, the Consolidated Human Services Board reviewed Ms. Baker's application and also made a motion to recommend it to the board.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask that we vote on these individually?
Okay. You're on that board. Would you like to make recommendations?
I'd like to, Miss Baker, we voted to, on the board, voted to have her reappointment, so I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Missy Baker to serve again on the board.
All right. Motion to appoint Missy Baker. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay.
And I'll say that Miss Lance, she is the CEO of Turning Point, and I'd make a motion that she be approved.
All those in favor of approving Ms. Lance say aye.
Aye. Mr. Chairman, I'll recommend we appoint Ms. Pritt, reappoint Ms. Pritt based on the recommendation of the Consolidated Human Services Board.
All right. Recommendation to appoint Ms. Pritt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
3-2. Nay. 2-2 nay. Okay. South Piedmont Community College Board of College Board of Trustees. I'll read this if you want me to, Mr. Manager. On May 4th, 2015, the board appointed Vice Chairman Akins to fill an unexpired term on South Piedmont Community College Board of Trustees. His term on that board expires June 30th, 2016. This item is to consider reappointment of Vice Chairman Akins to this board. A letter from Jarvis Woodburn, Chairman of South Piedmont Community College Board of Trustees, is included in the agenda packet. I'd like to make a motion that we consider reappointment of Vice Chairman Akins to, or that we do a reappointment of Vice Chairman Akins to serve on the South Piedmont Community College Board of Trustees. All those in favor? Say aye. Aye. All opposed? None. Okay. All right. Now, apologize. So sorry. If I'd have known it was going to take that long, I'd have moved you up. I was not thinking. Vice Chair, Chairwoman of the Union County Public Schools is here and has waited patiently all afternoon. This is for the budget request from the schools for transferring money for.
Yes, there are, actually the Board of Education has asked that you consider, there are 3 roofing projects that came in over budget, and those are Walter Bickett Elementary School, Rock Rest Elementary School, and the Wolf School. Where they are proposing, and it's within your agenda item, where they are proposing to take those monies from on those roofing projects is from savings that they saw in their bids that came back on Porter Ridge High School, as well as the bids that came back on Piedmont High School. And staff, in light of the fact that we support the ongoing re-roofing of schools, and that this is from existing savings and it doesn't impact any other school, have recommended approval.
Any questions of Ms. Boyd? She has waited patiently here.
I do have a question. If I add this up correctly, there's a $39,000 difference in the balance. Is that correct?
And what difference?
It's $40,869 from Piedmont, plus the $437,456 from Porter Ridge. And if I back out the 150, maybe my math is wrong this late.
It's 121 is what the Wolf School is over, is that what?
Well, the number I have is 150, so if I start backing stuff out, I'm left with roughly a $39,000 balance on savings. If you take the 437 plus the 40,
Commissioner,
wrong?
I'm actually, no, I probably am wrong.
okay.
I put together this agenda item, and based upon the information the schools had given me, so it's very possible that all the math doesn't add up. This is why I'm not your finance director. So I would ask that you take the action and that we will appropriate the dollars, because we're to take all the savings left over from Porter Ridge and apply it to all the schools, and then whatever is left over that still remains on the Wolf School would come out of Piedmont High. Can I ask for that consideration?
Unless there's an objection, so moved.
Okay.
Any questions? I want to thank you before we vote, because I want to thank you for coming tonight. I thought it was a very civil meeting that we had. It was a good first step. There was a little bit different tone than there's been in past, and I thank you for your leadership on that.
You're welcome.
And I look forward to more meetings. All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. All right, I think that brings us to the next hour and a half, right? That's it. County manager's comments.
The only comments I have this evening is thank you all for your patience as we have tried to work through what is a very emotional and a very important issue in this county. And so I appreciate your patience with staff this evening as we tried to get to a place where we could move forward. So thank you.
Commissioner Jerry Simpson.
No further comments, thank you.
Commissioner Richard Helms.
I'd just like to thank the community members and the fire departments, our municipalities that came tonight to share their opinions on our budget process. Thank you.
Commissioner Lance Simpson.
I just want to say thank you to staff for what you're about ready to go through again, and to the other commissioners for the dialogue, and to you, Chairman, for some spirited debate. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Vice Chairman Frank Atkins.
I just want to thank the Board of Education for the opportunity to meet with them and ask questions on their budget, and look forward to our next meeting so we can continue the spirited debate and try to reach a sound and basic education for the students of Union County.
And I'd like to say, one thing that in the spirited debates that we have, it doesn't get nasty. And it's not that we can all come together as a group of individuals and make a good decision. And I doubted highly we were going to get any kind of 5-0 decisions tonight, but we did, because we worked together and we talked together. We came to a compromise. And I appreciate every member of this board. I appreciate the input from the community. And we're going to have to fix this. It's going to have Johnny's input, Mayor Dieter, you're going to have input in this, Ron Fowler, our staff. And but it has to be fixed. We know that there's a problem. We know that there's inadequacies and inequalities in this, and we're going to have to fix it. So look forward to working toward that. We owe it to the taxpayers, and we're going to get it done. All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no.